Chapter 613. This was originally a small city, but because various sects kept sending people here, the streets of the city were already filled with people. But it was very orderly inside, perhaps because there were cultivators here. There was no chaos. Shun-ing and the others entered and realized that there were not only disciples from Dawning Pill sect, but also disciples from other sections. Even in the west of the city, there were already houses made of sorcery, and many mortals were queuing up to move in. Lone Moon could not help but feel a bit of the modern atmosphere of fighting floods and disaster relief. He did not expect the sects in this small world to have such a harmonious relationship with mortals. Lone Moon decided to go to the scattered cultivators' hall first. They called themselves itinerant cultivators because itinerant cultivators were more convenient, and also because itinerant cultivators had always been the most well-informed. And the Scattered Cultivators Hall was an itinerant cultivator organization. He had already found out about it during the few days on the spirit boat. It was a place specially for itinerant cultivators without sects to receive and issue all kinds of missions. From finding rare herbs to hunting spirit beasts, there were all kinds of missions. So itinerant cultivators gathered there to gather information. As they had asked for the location beforehand, they did not spend much time to find the place. The entrance was filled with cultivators. The moment the three entered, a woman who looked like a manager turned around. Fellow Taoist inside. The man stopped mid-sentence and stared blankly at the two people who had just entered the room. He was so shocked that he didn't recover for a long time. Fellow Taoist? Fellow Taoist. Lone Moon called out a few times. The manager was stunned, then reacted and hurriedly welcomed them in. Fellow Taoists, please come in. I wonder if you are here to issue a mission or to accept a mission. We just started cultivating not long ago. We want to come here to issue a mission, Lone Moon answered. Fellow Taoist is an itinerant cultivator. The person was even more shocked. All three of us are. Lone Moon nodded. 3. The steward paused and scanned the few of them. Only then did he notice Shun-ing, who was at the back. He seemed to have thought of something, and nodded in understanding. I see. Then I guess fellow Taoists will have to wait for a while. The steward pointed at the densely packed crowd inside and said, Today is the day of the new mission in the hall, so it's rather busy. After saying that, he thought for a moment, and led them to a table at the side to sit down. The few of them followed him and sat down. Perhaps it was because they were unfamiliar faces, but the bustling room suddenly became much quieter. Most of the cultivators turned to look at them. There were many people in the hall, but the strange thing was that most of them were female cultivators. Only a few of them were men with concealment array formations around them. Lone Moon did not mind. Instead, the steward who had just welcomed them seemed to be very curious. As he poured tea, he said, I see that the two of you have already reached the foundation establishment stage. Your talents must be extraordinary. Why didn't you join a sect, and instead became an itinerant cultivator? As she spoke, her eyes seemed to be unable to control themselves, and kept glancing at Chef beside her. We're used to freedom, and can't stand being restrained. That's why we became itinerant cultivators. Lone Moon replied. The steward frowned. She seemed to have thought of something and suddenly advised. It's always difficult for itinerant cultivators to cultivate. If the two of you want less trouble, it's better for you to join a sect. With that said, she even gave Shun-ing, who was nibbling on a fruit at the side, a look of reproach. Shun-ing. Meow meow meow. Thank you for the reminder, fellow Taoist. Lone Moon smiled politely. After thinking for a moment, he continued to ask. Oh yes, when we entered the city previously, we saw many mortals fleeing here. They said they encountered the disaster of fallen night. Isn't that so? The steward continued. Sigh, it happens a few times every year. The last time it happened was in a border city, thousands of miles away from here. I didn't expect it to come here so quickly. This fallen night is so scary. I'm a little curious. Where did it start? Of course it's the corroding vacant abyss, the steward blurted out. She suddenly thought of something, and looked at the few of them with a look of surprise. The few of you aren't also here to accept the mission to investigate the corroding vacant abyss, are you? There's such a mission. Lone Moon asked. This was jointly issued by all the big sections. The steward explained. This Fallen Night incident has been a threat for many years. All the sects have been investigating for a long time, but have not found the cause. They can only roughly confirm that it has something to do with the corroding vacant abyss. That's why they're calling for everyone to go in and investigate. But the corroding vacant abyss is extremely dangerous. It's very likely that you won't be able to return. That's why all the sects want to go together with itinerant cultivators. Although the rewards are generous, it's really too dangerous inside. Fellow Taoists, please don't take things too hard. Thank you, fellow Taoist. It looked like the darkness came from the corroding vacant abyss. The steward nervously emphasized the danger of the corroding vacant abyss. Seeing that they had no intention of giving up, he sighed and walked away to help them with the registration procedures for itinerant cultivators. He looked at them with a look of pity. Before he left, he did not forget to glare at Xining, who had been silent all this while. He seemed to be extremely dissatisfied with her laissez-faire. Xining. Motherf *Ker. The few of them did not stay long in the scattered cultivators' hall. After knowing that the darkness started from the corroding vacant abyss, they accepted the scouting mission that the steward had just mentioned. They also asked for a map and left directly. Not far from the city, Lone Moon was about to look at the direction of the map when I Ching frowned and said, "Someone is following us." I knew it long ago. Lone Moon replied casually. They've been following us since the beginning of the scattered cultivators' hall. It was just a few foundation establishment cultivators and a golden core cultivator. They probably saw that there were only 3 of them and wanted to kill them and rob them of their treasures. Indeed, not long after they flew out, 5 tall and sturdy cultivators suddenly rushed out and blocked their way. Fellow Taoists, are you heading to the corroding vacant abyss? The one in the middle, who seemed to be the leader, was a female cultivator dressed in blue. She smiled wretchedly and took a step forward. Narrowing her eyes, she scanned the few of them. Why don't you travel with us? At least we can take care of each other. Oh, fellow Taoist, are you sure that you only want to travel with us? Lone Moon looked at the money bag that was delivered to his door and smiled. The female cultivator seemed to be dazzled by his smile. Instantly, her gaze on the few of them became even more heated. Fellow Taoist, what are you saying? We are proper itinerant cultivators. It's just that the corroding vacant abyss is dangerous, and we're afraid that a beauty would get hurt. That's why we want to take care of you. Beauty? Lone Moon subconsciously turned back to look at Xining. Since when did her presence become so strong? Or could it be that these people were criminals? In that case, we have to thank you. Lone Moon laughed coldly and scanned the few of them. Only then did he realize that they were actually all female cultivators. Fellow Taoist, don't stand on ceremony. The female cultivator smiled even more happily. The greed in her eyes was about to overflow. As long as you're obedient, Big Sister will definitely ensure your safety. In the future, you'll naturally be able to eat and drink well. Chapter 6:14. I don't lack good food and drinks, and I'm not interested in the same trade. Lone Moon's smile deepened, and he narrowed his eyes. I'm just a little interested in the spirit stones in your storage bags. Why don't you take the initiative and take them out first? The other party's expression darkened, but a female cultivator at the side suddenly laughed. Ha ha ha. Boss, looks like this little beauty doesn't like you. Boss, why do you have to be so courteous with them? I've never seen such a good-looking man. And one with cultivation, don't waste it. That's right. I noticed when we just entered the city, they don't belong to any sect or have any backing at all. To be able to dual cultivate with such a beauty, I'd have no regrets even if I died. Boss, if you don't go, we'll go. That's right, boss. That woman over there looks useless. Let's take her down first. Lone Moon. What do they mean? He faltered for a moment. The beauties they were talking about. Were they talking about him and Chef? In a flash, he vaguely thought of something. Before he could think carefully, the leading female cultivator's expression darkened even more, and she snorted coldly. I was going to be gentler to you on account of your looks. Looks like you're going to have to do the hard way. He suddenly released the suppressive power of a golden core cultivator. Then don't blame me for making a move. With that said, he directly took out a square jade seal, activated his spirit chi, and instantly that Dharma artifact flew up. I want to see who can protect you. With that said, that Dharma artifact flashed and directly flew towards them. How dare they show off an inferior grade spirit artifact in front of him? Loneman's eyes narrowed, and just as he was about to attack, he saw that jade seal suddenly turn to the side, and then with a loud thud, it directly hit Shen Ying's head, who was behind. It even made a clear and deep echo. Lone Moon, who was ready to attack I Ching, who was completely defenseless. He watched as that heavy seal directly slid down from Shen Ying's forehead, leaving a square mark, and faintly the words spirit-suppressing seal could be seen. The scene was instantly as quiet as a chicken. Shen Ying, who had been watching calmly from the sidelines, stood expressionlessly on the spot. 1 second passed, 2 seconds passed. Lone Moon suddenly had a bad feeling. Master? Even Chef called out subconsciously. Suddenly, Shen Ying's hand tightened. The half-eaten fruit was crushed into pieces. In the next moment, a monstrous rage emanated from her body. Although she was expressionless, her entire body seemed to be burning with raging flames. A terrifying aura instantly erupted from her body and swept across the entire small world. For a moment, the earth trembled and the mountains shook. With a series of cracking sounds, the entire world seemed to be unable to withstand the pressure and began to break apart. Cracks immediately appeared on the ground, and even the sky began to distort. The wind raged, and the sun and moon lost their radiance. The entire world was collapsing. F***ck. Lone Moon was shocked. He grabbed hold of the person who was about to go berserk. Shen Ying, calm down. This is someone else's plane, hey. You can't just casually smash it. Master. I Ching was shocked as well. This has nothing to do with anyone else. Only then did Shen Ying retract her aura, and the surrounding collapse stopped. The 5 female cultivators had long been suppressed by the surrounding suppressive force, and could not stand up. Their entire bodies sank into the ground, unable to move. Their faces were filled with shock and confusion. What just happened? Who were they? Where were they? Shen Ying picked up the seal on the ground and walked over step by step. What are you trying to do? Perhaps sensing danger, the female cultivator's eyes widened. She wanted to escape, but she could not move. She could only watch as Shen Ying walked over step by step with the seal in her hand and squatted down beside her. Then she raised the seal and pressed it hard on the top of her head. Seal, right? Leave a seal, right? I'll let you seal all you want. I'm a melon eater. Don't go crazy. You think I'm putting on a show? #. With that said, she pressed the seal all over her head and face. In an instant, the 3 words spirit subduing seal were deeply imprinted on her face. But Shen Ying did not stop. She directly picked up the spirit sword on the ground beside her and carved a few words herself. Then she pressed the seal on her entire body. Upon closer inspection, he realized that there was a row of imprints on her body. This meat did not pass inspection, cannot be eaten. Wait. Shen Ying turned and walked towards the other women. She did the same and covered their entire bodies with the seal, especially in the most conspicuous places. Lone Moon quietly glanced at them and realized that the seal was not only on their skin, but also on their souls with a special aura. In other words, unless these people reincarnated, they would carry this failed inspection mark with them for the rest of their lives. No matter how high their cultivation level was in the future, they would not be able to get rid of it. It seemed that the female cultivator's sudden attack just now had really pissed Shen Ying off. Shen Ying covered them for a whole hour before her temper subsided. She returned to her lazy self. She turned and walked back. Then she stuffed the 5 storage bags in her hands to Father Nyo out of habit. Here. I Ching. Lone Moon. She didn't forget to pick up the loot even when she was angry. He suddenly felt that this daughter could be pampered a little more. Shen Ying continued to take out a fruit and took a bite. Then, thinking of something, she turned and added, I don't like this stepmother. What did she mean? Lone Moon felt that there was something wrong with this world, whether it was on the spirit boat or when they entered the scattered cultivators' hall. The way the cultivators in this world looked at them gave him a strange feeling. Even their attitudes seemed a little too warm. At first, he did not understand what was so strange about it. Until he met the 5 cultivators who robbed him. Their words seemed to reveal something. They were not only here to rob him. Their main goal seemed to be him and Chef. And they even talked about dual cultivation. At first, he thought that they were some kind of fiendish cultivator, or demonic woman, with special cultivation techniques. But now it was obvious that they were not. If there was anything in common between these few incidents. Holy shit. Lone Moon suddenly reacted. His eyes widened. There are no male cultivators in this world. Whether it was the robbers or the disciples of Dawning Pill sect, they were all women. Not a single man. At first, she thought that Dawning Pill sect was a sect for female cultivators. But later, she saw that all the people in the city were female cultivators. It's not that there aren't any. It might be that there are very few. I Ching thought of this as well. His face turned green. If there really were no male cultivators, when they said they were cultivators, the other party would not just be shocked but suspicious. Wait a minute. If there are so few male cultivators in this world, judging from the way those people treated him and Chef so well back then, and how they treated Xining who needed their constant reminders, they did not even try to hide their dissatisfaction. Could this place be the world of female supremacy? Xining replied, Lone Moon, I Ching, MMP. Chapter 615. The map distributed by the itinerant cultivator hall pointed to a place called Yaoru City. It was said that that was the only immortal city with a transportation array to the corroding vacant valley. Given Lone Moon and I Ching's speed, they reached that immortal city in a few days. They directly went through the transportation array to the corroding vacant valley. Almost at the instant they stepped out of the array, they felt a cold and gloomy aura hit them in the face. They saw a huge abyss in front of them, as if the sky and earth had suddenly been broken. On one side was still a wasteland, but on the other side was only a bottomless darkness. A thick black aura like ink was coming out of it continuously. It was already dark all around them, but the direction of the abyss was so dark that there was not a trace of light. Even when they used their divine perception to probe it, they could not sense any movement. Lone Moon subconsciously frowned. For a moment he could not tell what was inside. At this moment, there was already a dense crowd of cultivators gathered in front of the corroding vacant valley. Most of them were itinerant cultivators, but there were also cultivators from various sects wearing the same school uniform. But everyone was watching from the side. No one directly entered. Lone Moon glanced at them and found that the majority of the crowd were indeed female cultivators. There were only a few male cultivators here and there, but they were either wearing light gauze hats or veils to hide their faces, hiding delicately at the side. Their cultivation levels were even lower. The highest was only at the golden core stage, and most of them were surrounded by a few women standing protectively around them. So when Lone Moon and I Ching walked out of the transportation array openly, they immediately attracted the attention of all the cultivators present. The surroundings were obviously quiet for a moment. At that moment, all the gazes were fixed on them. Some were surprised and puzzled, and some were even probing. There were even people who directly released their divine perception and brazenly swept over them, as if they were taking advantage of them. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. This was the first time so many people had brazenly offended him. Instantly, he felt a burst of anger. This F***ed-up world of female supremacy. Subconsciously, he released his suppressive force and returned those presumptuous gazes back one by one. Instantly, a few cultivators' faces turned pale. Then, as if they were frightened, they hurriedly retracted their divine perception, not daring to probe further. Taoist Lone Moon. Suddenly, a pleasantly surprised voice rang out. A person with a sturdy figure, dressed in green clothes. And if it weren't for the extra 2 lumps on her chest, no one would be able to tell that she was a woman. She squeezed out from the crowd and walked quickly toward them with a pleasantly surprised smile on her face. There was a faint trace of excitement in her eyes. His eyes seemed to be shining as he stared intently at Father Neo, who was at the front. "Why are you guys here too?" The 3 of them were stunned. Who was this person? The woman stared at Lone Moon for a moment. Suddenly, she thought of something and her expression changed. You're not planning to enter the corroding vacant abyss too, are you? She frowned and put on a worried expression. She looked around and finally fixed her gaze on Shen, who was at the back. She said disapprovingly, "Fellow Taoist Shen, the corroding vacant abyss is so dangerous. How can we let our two fellow Taoists take such a risk?" "Shen, why is it me again?" "Fellow Taoist Shen, this is your fault," she said righteously. "As a woman, how can you let the man behind you take such a risk? What's more, fellow Taoist Lone Moon is your father. Listen to me and stop fooling around. Hurry back." With that said, she even gave Lone Moon a loving look. Lone Moon instantly felt goosebumps all over his body. Frowning, he said, "We don't know you, fellow Taoist. You don't have to worry about this. I will be careful." "Even if I'm careful?" She seemed to have thought of something. She paused and asked, "Don't tell me you don't remember me? I'm Lu Lin from the Danxia sect. We met on the spirit boat a few days ago." She reminded them slightly disappointedly. The few of them were stunned. Instantly, they remembered the storage bag full of ingredients. Fu Ying's eyes lit up. She was the first to remember. She blurted out, "Oh, prepare a stepmother." "I Ching. Lone Moon. Prepare a stepmother? What the hell?" Lu Lin nodded excitedly. Yes. That's me. Lone Moon. Son of AB *TCH. Do you think I won't call Xinjing right now?" "Oh yes, fellow Taoist Lone Moon." Seeing that the few of them remembered, Lu Lin became even more enthusiastic. She stepped forward and looked straight at Lone Moon. She asked nervously, "Did the food from last time suit your taste? Fellow Taoist Shen said that you like these the most. So these days I went to various immortal cities to collect some more. I don't know if you like it." As she spoke, she hurriedly took out a storage bag and handed it over with a fawning expression. Lone Moon's expression darkened. He turned and glared at a certain foodie behind him. Damn it! What nonsense did he say to her? The latter silently took a step back. She looked at the sky and the ground, but did not dare to look at his eyes. She pretended not to know anything. Chef, the weather is so good today." A certain brain-dead disciple quickly cooperated and added, "Yes, master. The sun didn't even appear in the sky today." Lone Moon. "Do you think that if you don't admit it, I won't deduct your food expenses? F***CK. Fellow Taoist Lone Moon?" Seeing that he did not take it, Lu Lin looked confused. "No need." Lone Moon's expression darkened. Lu Lin was stunned. "Fellow Taoist, haven't you always liked these? I've quit. Can't I?" Lu Lin was stumped. Seeing his cold expression, she could only take it back. I see. Men are indeed fickle. But fellow Taoist Lone Moon's angry look is also very cute. The more Lu Lin looked at him, the more she liked him. Her eyes were as sticky as superglue, and her face was full of infatuation. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. Goosebumps appeared all over his body like mushrooms after spring. This damned world of female supremacy. "Let's go, we're going in." He turned and told the two prodigals, "I'll settle the score with you when we get in." He was about to fly into the corroding vacant abyss on his sword. Lu Lin, who was staring at them in a daze, finally reacted. "Wait, fellow Taoist Lone Moon. Even if you really want to go in, you can't do it now." "Huh?" Lone Moon turned back. "Why?" He turned to look at the center of the crowd, then looked at them worriedly. Seeing that they had no intention of giving up on going in, he sighed and said, "This corroding vacant abyss is boundless. No one knows what's going on. To prevent everyone from getting lost inside, the sect masters and elders of the various sects are working together to set up a transportation array so that everyone can come back through this array." As he spoke, he pointed to the center of the dense crowd. Lone Moon subconsciously released his divine perception to scan. Indeed, he felt traces of spirit energy fluctuations in that direction. He turned to look at Chef. "It's the 5-spirit transportation array." I Ching also discovered that array. He directly transmitted his voice. "In this small world, as long as there's spirit chi, we can come back by activating the array. It was just that this array consumed too much energy for cultivators in the lower realm. Even high-level cultivators could only maintain it for a month at most. Lone Moon took a closer look. Indeed, there were a few soul formation cultivators in the center of the crowd. You guys should have the waste tokens of itinerant cultivators, right? Lulin continued. Later, when the array is activated, the waste token will automatically mark your aura. When you want to come out, just activate the waste token. Lone Moon thought of the waste token he received a few days ago at the itinerant cultivator hall. He thought it was just an identity token for itinerant cultivators. So it had this function. No wonder these people gathered here, but did not go in. They were waiting for the array to be completed. Thank you for the reminder, fellow Taoist. Although this array was of no use to the three of them, Lone Moon still thanked her out of habit. You're welcome. Lulin blushed. She looked at him with misty eyes again. Motherf asterisk Kerr. The array is activated. Someone shouted. Indeed, in the next moment, a blinding white light suddenly appeared in the center of the crowd. In the next moment, a huge transportation array appeared beneath everyone's feet. Lone Moon looked down at the waste token in his hand. Then, he turned to Chef and Shining and said, "Let's go in." With that said, he did not stay. He directly flew up on his sword and followed the crowd into the thicker darkness of the corroding vacant abyss. Chapter 6:16. Lone Moon did not know if it was an illusion, but the moment he entered the thicker darkness, he felt something invisible brush past him. This feeling was very strange, as if he had fallen into something, but it disappeared in the blink of an eye. Shining. He stopped in his tracks and subconsciously looked at the two people beside him. It was obvious that they had noticed it too. What was that? Shining was silent for a moment, then shook her head. I don't know yet. Lone Moon's frown deepened. He released his divine perception and was about to head deeper into the Eraton abyss. Suddenly, a familiar voice called out from behind him. Wait a minute, fellow Taoist Lone Moon. Lulin chased after Lone Moon from afar, looking rather anxious. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He turned back to look. Fellow Taoist, is there anything else? Was he a sticky candy? Lulin stopped in front of the three of them and said worriedly, Fellow Taoists, this corroding vacant valley is very big. It's too dangerous for the three of you to go alone. Lone Moon and I Ching are both men. As he spoke, he glanced at the two of them, his eyes filled with pity. Why don't the three of you travel with my dawning pill sect? As she spoke, she pointed to the dozens of cultivators behind her who were dressed like her. We will protect you. There's no need. Lone Moon rejected directly. Hindrance. He turned around, intending to continue flying. Lulin said anxiously, but it's just the three of you, and we don't have a map of this place. It's too dangerous. A map. Lone Moon paused and turned around. You have a map of the corroding vacant valley? Lulin was stunned, as if she had just realized that she had let the cat out of the bag. She looked around nervously, then gritted her teeth and said in a low voice, To tell you the truth, it's not just our dawning pill sect that has a map. Every sect has a map of this place in the past, but we don't know if it's useful. The terrain of the past. Lone Moon caught the keyword in her words. Yes. Lulin nodded. Seeing that he didn't quite understand, she continued to explain. Many years ago, the original corroding vacant abyss wasn't like this. It was rumored that this place was once a celestial mountain-blessed land with dense spiritual energy. Many sects had established their sects here. It was only when nightfall descended that this place became like this overnight. She turned her head to look at the scattered cultivators of the various sects and continued. This time, there are so many cultivators here. Other than wanting to investigate the truth behind fallen night, the more important reason is that everyone also wants to come in and search for an opportunity. So that's how it is. I thought that this small world really had a sense of justice, but in the end, everyone was just here to pick up the leftovers. Putting aside the strange situation here, just the fact that there were so many sects that had fallen here made it seem like a very good mystic realm to pick up loot from. Although so many years have passed, the terrain here is no longer the same as it was before. But having a map is always better than just barging in. Lulin persuaded him even more seriously. So, fellow Taoist Lone Moon, Why don't you join us? His expression darkened, and he changed his mind instantly. This was not their plane. Although they were managers, their powers were limited. Even if they released their divine perception, they couldn't fully explore this place. Since someone was taking the initiative to lead the way, there was naturally no reason for him to reject. Thus, his attitude became much gentler. He even habitually put on a businesslike smile and said with a kind expression, "Then I'll have to trouble fellow Taoist Lu." He even cupped his fists politely, but found that the other party didn't react at all. She froze on the spot. Huh? Fellow Taoist Lu? Taoist Lu. Wait, holy shit. Why is your nose bleeding? The two of them narrowed their eyes in tacit understanding and turned to look over. Your sister. He clearly didn't do anything. All he did was smile. Keep your ambiguous wavy lines away. Senior Sister Lu, are you done? The tens of Dawning Pill sect disciples waiting on the spot saw that Lu Lin had not returned after a long time. They could not help but urge her from afar. They also couldn't help but look curiously at Lone Moon and I Ching. The stunned Lu Lin finally reacted. Her face turned red, and she hurriedly lowered her head to wipe away the blood from her nose. Then she turned and said, "Coming." She smiled foolishly and led the three of them toward the people of Dawning Pill sect. She first brought them to meet the Uncle Master, who was leading the group, then briefly introduced the three of them. Lone Moon took a closer look. The leader of Dawning Pill sect was a late-stage nascent soul female cultivator. The rest of the disciples were mostly golden core cultivators. Perhaps because Lu Lin had informed them beforehand, the nascent soul cultivator did not object to their joining. She even nodded in a friendly manner. Instead, the other disciples turned around curiously. Their gazes were fixed on Lone Moon and I Ching. The fire in their eyes was no different from Lu Lin's. Lone Moon's expression stiffened. He felt goosebumps all over his body. Suddenly, he regretted agreeing to go with them. At the sight, I Ching's expression turned cold. Then, he directly turned sideways and decisively hugged Shining, who was nibbling on a fruit. He lowered his body and called out in a low voice, "Master." Shining was stunned for a moment. Then she immediately understood. Very cooperatively, she gave him a kiss on the cheek. Seal. Instantly, the gazes that were fixed on him darkened. Then, they all turned to look at Lone Moon. Lone Moon. Son of AB*th. Single dogs have no human rights. Serves them right to be their shield. Since everyone is here, let's go. In the end, it was the older nascent soul female cultivator who said this. Only then did everyone retract their gazes, that seemed as if they wanted to skin him alive. But along the way, they still turned back to glance at him from time to time. There were even many disciples who deliberately slowed down the speed of their flying swords, and came over to say a few words. So fellow Taoist is called Lone Moon. One look and I can tell that you are a good family man. Oh yes, I am called ***. Fellow Taoist, you really look like the friend of my Uncle Master's niece from the sect next door. Fellow Taoist, are you interested in joining our Dawning Pill sect? I think you are very suitable to be my little junior brother. The most adorable kind. Fellow Taoist, how old are you? Where do you live? Who are you? Are you married? Fellow Taoist. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He silently recited the Clear Heart Sutra several times before he managed to maintain his composure and did not turn hostile. Logically speaking, he had been quite popular since he was young. The number of love letters he had received was at least a few dozen kilograms. He was already used to being confessed to and pursued by girls in public. But those were a group of soft and fragrant girls, alright? Not this group of girls in front of him. They were about the same height as him, and had fierce faces. They stared at him from time to time and drooled. Apart from their slightly protruding chests, they were more manly than a man. Suddenly, he felt that the group of invincible sect Barbies were more pleasing to the eye than them. At least they were normal usually. These people only gave him the illusion that he was being forced to be gay. What's more, he was the one at the bottom. Father Nyo, calm down. Seeing that he was about to explode, Shining could not help but pat his shoulder. Father Nyo, just get used to it. Chef added. He glared back at them. How could he get used to it? If you have the ability, don't hug each other. A degree, ***. Fellow Taoist Lone Moon, do you want some water? Do you want some fruits or pastries? Lu Lin, who had been lazing at the side, could not help but be attentive. She dug out her storage bag, but her eyes were still fixed on Lone Moon, looking obsessed. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He glanced at the master and disciple who were eating fruits and watching the show. He only felt that a certain string in his mind snapped. He took a deep breath and suddenly smiled brightly. Shening, I've thought it through. I don't mind being your second wife. Damn it, I definitely cannot be the only one who is blind. Shening. Lu Lin. Swoosh. A certain someone had already pulled out his long sword. Chapter 617. Ever since Lone Moon said that, everyone's imaginations went wild, imagining a drama of the century. Almost immediately, all the gazes on him turned to Shening. It was different from the adoration from before. Now there was anger, blame, disdain, and indignation in the eyes of a certain someone who played with people's hearts. If not for the fact that they were in the corroding vacant valley, they would have made a move already. Lu Lin's reaction was even greater. Her face was pale, and she looked sad and hopeless. She could not even control her sword steadily. She looked at the two of them and muttered to herself, I guess long ago that you two were not father and daughter. So you two. Instantly, the way the others looked at Shun Ying began to burn with boundless murderous intent. Two words were written in every pair of eyes, beast. Not satisfied with one, she still wanted to seduce the other. Shening, who was rarely tricked. Son of a B***th. Suddenly, she felt that the fruit was no longer fragrant. She turned to look at a certain father who suddenly felt refreshed. Shening, why bother? We were born of the same root. Why rush to kill each other? Lone Moon. Fellow Taoist would rather die than me. This is what you get for cheating me. I Ching. Indeed, everyone wants to snatch my master away from me. Draw your sword, little bitch. We're here. The nascent soul cultivator leading the group suddenly stopped and looked around. It was still pitch black. A trace of doubt flashed across her eyes. Strange, this should be the ruins of the sacred medicine sect. Why is there nothing here? Why is it so desolate? She took out a piece of the map in the shape of a jade slip and examined it carefully. As if she had confirmed something, she turned to look at the disciples and said in a deep voice, We've arrived. Everyone go down and take a look around. Be careful and don't go too far. This could be the source of the fallen night outbreak. Remember to be careful. Yes, Uncle Master. Everyone cupped their fists in response and flew down one by one. Lone Moon and the other two hurriedly flew down as well. Lu Lin hesitated for a moment. Although she was sad, she still followed them worriedly. From Lu Lin's ramblings along the way, they understood that this darkness was very likely to have erupted from the fallen sects in this area. This place was obviously one of them. The moment they landed, Lone Moon and I Ching released their divine perception and scanned the surrounding area. However, he still couldn't find anything. There was nothing around him, but the darkness seemed to be deeper than the entrance. Since their divine senses didn't work, they could only look around with the other disciples. 3. Fellow Taoists. Lu Lin gritted her teeth and quickly caught up to him. Don't go too far. It's easy to get lost here. They nodded, found a direction and walked away. However, after searching for a long time, they didn't find anything. Shening, did you see anything? Lone Moon turned to a certain cheat. Shening took a bite of her fruit and answered slowly. There should be soon. Ah, what did he mean by very soon? Martial uncle. I found it. Before he could react, a cultivator suddenly exclaimed from behind him. Lone Moon and Chef exchanged a look and picked up Shening. In a flash, they headed in the direction of the voice. They saw a female cultivator from the Dawning Pill sect standing not far away. She said excitedly, I found it. I found the ruins of the sacred medicine sect. A moment later, the female nascent soul cultivator, who was leading the group, also came over. Where? Here. Here. She turned and pointed in front of her excitedly. Lone Moon subconsciously looked over. He hadn't noticed before, but now that he looked closely, he realized that not far to the right of the female cultivator, there was a tall wall. The wall was pitch black and irregular. It looked like half of it had collapsed. It looked like a dilapidated mountain gate. The sacred medicine sect is indeed here. The nascent soul cultivator leading the group was overjoyed. She walked forward excitedly. Everyone, let's go in first. The other cultivators followed. After all, it was a large sect in the past. There might be something good there. Lone Moon also subconsciously released his divine perception to scan the broken wall. He could vaguely feel that there were all kinds of talisman characters carved on it. They looked old and very simple. They also had a special aura of life, as if they were alive. Wait, that's not a wall. Alarmed, he reacted immediately. He waved a wind spell toward the group in front of him. It wrapped around the people who were about to cross the black wall, and pulled them back. They were not prepared at all. Before they could react, they fell to the ground, including the nascent soul female cultivator. Fellow Taoist Lone Moon, what are you? Everyone looked confused. They were just about to ask when they suddenly heard a loud roar. That sound was very ear-piercing. Instantly, everyone felt a strong gust of wind sweeping toward them. It carried with it a huge suppressive force. Several golden core cultivators were directly blown away and smashed into the ground. They saw that the originally motionless wall in front of them began to shake. The ground suddenly shook violently. The entire ground was cracking, as if something was about to dig its way out. Get on your swords and leave this place. The nascent soul cultivator shouted. It's coming out. Only then did everyone react. One by one, they flew up on their swords. Shening and the others did the same. Following a series of loud rumbling sounds, everyone then saw a lump of black stuff emerging from the ground. It was as huge as a building. It looked like a liquid and had no specific shape. It was completely black, but from time to time, something that looked like characters flashed across its body. There was even a sawtooth-like horn on its head. It was the wall that they had mistaken earlier. What is this? One of the cultivators exclaimed. In the next moment, they saw that lump of black stuff move. In an instant, it turned into a huge black demon beast. It had 4 legs and 6 wings. Its body was also covered in purple flames. Lone Moon immediately recognized that it was an 11th level demon beast. He blurted out, "Isn't this the purple flame beast?" He had never heard of a demon beast that could turn into a liquid. No. Shen Ying's eyes narrowed. Suddenly she said, "It's a Jinli." What? Lone Moon was stunned. He subconsciously asked, "What Jinli? Why have I never heard of such a demon beast?" It's not a demon beast. It's so big. If it's not a demon beast, what could it be? He stopped mid-sentence. He suddenly thought of something. Wait, Jinli? Why did these 2 words sound so familiar? They seemed to have seen it somewhere before. Jinli. Jinli. Lone Moon was shocked. The spatial creature Jinli. Yes. Shening nodded. Holy shit. Didn't it sound familiar? Back then, in the assistance information that he had been studying for more than 3 months, there was a special chapter on this creature. It was a shapeless creature that only lived in the cracks of the plain, Jinli. Suddenly, he felt that those cultivators who had come in with him, and now had no idea where they were going to die. Chapter 618. Like the Beast of Chaos, Spatially was a creature that moved outside the plane space. Under normal circumstances, it could not enter the plane, only when there was a crack in the plane, or when there was a plane storm. Moreover, Spatially was formless and had its own space attribute. Even if it invaded the plane, it was difficult to detect its whereabouts except for the manager. To deal with such a creature, not to mention these golden core and nascent soul cultivators, even immortals would be eaten. Step back. The leading nascent soul cultivator suddenly shouted. This is a purple flame beast. Remember not to be burned by its flames. The other party obviously thought that Spatially was an ordinary 11th level demon beast, conjuring a seal with his hands to trap it. The other disciples also took out their weapons and prepared for battle, looking as if they were ready to fight. Lone Moon's heart sank, and he was about to remind them. Lu Lin suddenly came out and blocked in front of them, saying, Fellow Taoist Lone Moon, you guys quickly step back, don't get close. This is an 11th level demon beast. You are only at the foundation establishment stage, and you are men, you can't block its purple flames. The 11th level was equivalent to the early stage of soul formation. Although dangerous, there were 4 nascent soul cultivators in their team, and so many golden core cultivators. It was not impossible. With that said, she gripped the sword in her hand tightly, blocking in front of them, saying, "Don't act rashly, we will protect you, don't go too far away from me." With that said, she also gave a look to the few female cultivators beside her, who hurriedly moved over, as if intentionally blocking Lone Moon and I Ching behind them, with the attitude of protectors. Lone Moon, I Ching. Before he could explain, the other side had already started, only to see the leading nascent soul female cultivator directly set up a huge array. The white array light fell towards the giant beast in the middle. It looked like it was about to trap it. "Shit! Don't use the array." Before Lone Moon could finish, the demon beast suddenly roared loudly. Just lifting its claws lightly, that array directly passed through as if it was non-existent. The leading female cultivator was shocked. Before she could react, she only felt a bone-piercing chill sweeping over, as if there was a huge aura rushing over. Immediately all the spirit energy in her body dissipated. Her body became unstable, and she was directly sent flying. Lone Moon summoned a wind spell and caught the man in the air, but he was already unconscious. Spatial creatures had the ability to travel through space, so how could they be trapped by an array formation? In the blink of an eye, they had lost a nascent soul cultivator. Everyone's faces paled as they realized that this was no ordinary demonic beast. The other nascent soul cultivator reacted and shouted, "Let's go! Leave this place." Everyone was stunned. Only then did they fly up on their swords. Lu Lin also turned subconsciously, intending to pull Lone Moon back. "Fellow Taoist, hurry out of the way." Before she could finish speaking, Lone Moon suddenly acted first. He grabbed her and threw her towards the female cultivator behind him. The fan in his hand instantly turned into a long sword. He turned back and instructed, "Shening, look after them." "Oh." Shening took out a new fruit and answered, "Chef, I'll leave the left side to you. Don't let it escape." With that said, his figure flashed and he flew out. Chef also disappeared from where he was. In the next moment, an oppressive sword wind swept over. Everyone felt their bodies become unsteady. By the time they reacted, everyone had already been blown behind Shening. Shocking sword chi shot up into the sky. A sky full of white sword rain appeared. Every sword made of spirit chi seemed to come to life. They directly fell towards the huge beast below. That huge beast let out a sharp and piercing scream. It was instantly minced into pieces. The purple flame beast immediately scattered into balls of black wriggling liquid. But in an instant it was reborn again, and it transformed into a new shape. This time, it was a huge Lingyun immortal beast. "Chef, don't give it a chance to reform." Lone Moon reminded again. Spatially had spatial attributes. Once it recovered, it could cut open space and escape to other small worlds. The most effective way was to chase it out of the plane. I Ching responded. The sword moves in his hands became more concentrated. The sword chi in the air also became stronger. Even the cultivators who he deliberately avoided felt an unstoppable pressure. For a moment their legs felt weak. Lu Lin and her fellow disciples were all stunned. This sword chi, this pressure, it was not at the foundation establishment stage at all. Even nascent soul, no, even soul formation cultivators did not have such terrifying sword chi. She turned to look at Shening, who was the only one calmly eating a fruit. She could not help but ask, "Fellow Taoist Shen, fellow Taoist Lone Moon and the others, what cultivation level are they at?" "Huh." Shening was stunned. She tilted her head and thought for a moment. Then she said, Maybe a little more powerful than a god?" "Lu Lin." Everyone. "Are you King kidding me?" Lu Lin did not believe her words. She thought that she was just joking. She looked at the two people in the air again. At this time, Lone Moon had already stopped attacking. He turned and directly opened the exit of this plane. Suddenly, a blinding white light appeared in the pitch-black sky. The heaven and earth seemed to be torn open. An unfamiliar aura that did not belong to this plane came from inside. Lone Moon gave I Ching a look, indicating for him to rush the spatially over. The spatially was a creature that did not belong to this world. It could not be killed here. I Ching also understood. He changed his sword move and directly forced the giant beast below towards the direction of the opening. The spatially also seemed to understand their intentions. It fought back even more crazily. Sharp roars came continuously, as if it could destroy primordial spirits. The cultivators could not take it anymore. They had to use their spirit chi to cover their ears. They bent over in pain, except for Shining, who was at the front. Lu Lin felt that the golden core in her body was about to break. Just as she was about to lose, there seemed to be a gentle aura sweeping over. Everyone only felt their bodies relax. The sound waves that pierced into their primordial spirits disappeared instantly. "Are you all right?" Shining suddenly turned back and asked, still eating that fruit in her hand. Lu Lin was stunned. She subconsciously replied, I'm fine." The next moment her eyes widened. Fellow Taoist Shun, the spatially, which was still being forced to retreat, suddenly split half of its body. A pitch-black sharp horn appeared in its black liquid body. It was the one that had just turned into a wall. With a shocking murderous aura, it rushed straight over. The first to bear the brunt was Shining, who was at the front. Lu Lin's face paled. She subconsciously wanted to rush forward to pull her back. Quick dodge. But it was already too late. The giant beast had already rushed over. Just as it was about to hit the person in front of it, there was a poof. The black liquid beast suddenly stopped in front of the two of them. Upon closer inspection, they realized that Shining had unknowingly reached out a hand and was firmly grasping the long horn of the beast. It was obviously a very casual grasp, but the other party was unable to advance or retreat at all. She even had the time to look back at Lu Lin. "What did you just say?" Lu Lin looked confused. After a while she replied weakly, "No, nothing." Indeed, the three of them were not simple cultivators. Oh. Chapter 619. Lu Lin turned back to look at the huge beast in her hand, only to see that the extremely arrogant unknown demon beast was now starting to sway in waves, as if it was trembling. "Shining!" Lone Moon suddenly shouted, still in the air. "What are you waiting for? Hurry and throw it over." This was not their plane. The door could not be open for too long. "Oh!" Shining responded, only to hear a crisp crack. She suddenly twisted the hand holding the horn to the side, instantly breaking the black horn into two. "Ow!" Spatially immediately let out a scream, as if it was in extreme pain but had to desperately suppress it. The waves on its body swayed even more, turning into two streams of water, pitifully covering the broken horn. So painful, so painful. But it could not roll, it would die. But Shining directly picked up the half-broken horn, raised her hand, and threw it towards the white exit in the air. The spatially trembled, turned around subconsciously, and rushed out of the door after its own horn. Horn. My horn. In the next moment, it disappeared in the white light. Lone Moon changed the spell in his hand, directly sealing the opening. The white light disappeared instantly. Everything returned to pitch black. Only then did the two fly back. "There's actually a spatially here." Lone Moon frowned. Logically speaking, as long as the manager was here, creatures like the spatially that lived in the cracks of space could not invade the plane. Back then, their plane did not have a manager. God Fiend and the others did not let a single one in. Is Chao Kun already this week? Only then could the spatially break into the plane. "I think it's not because of him," I Ching replied. He lowered his head to look at Xin Ying's hand, and turned to retrieve a white silk handkerchief. He pulled her hand up and wiped it out of habit until the unknown black substance was all over Xin Ying's hand. As he did so, he conjured a dirt removal spell and said, "This kind of invading creature is not strong. He was able to break through the plane to seek help previously. He can't be so weak that he can't even withstand the spatial separation. Could it be that someone let it in?" Lone Moon said subconsciously. The next moment he was stunned, exchanged a look with Chef. Both of them thought of the same person at the same time. The intruder who injured Chao Kun. Was he the one who let the spatially in? But why? A small boss like spatially was indeed a disaster to the beings of the three realms. But to a manager, It was a piece of cake. It was not as difficult to deal with as spatial storms or planar rifts. 3. Seniors. Lu Lin looked at the three of them with a complicated expression, but she did not dare to address them as fellow Taoists anymore. Even the way she looked at Lone Moon changed from the way she looked at him, just now, to one of respect. Although she didn't know what they were talking about, she felt that it wasn't something she could understand. Thus he cupped his fists and bowed politely. "What's wrong? Are you hurt?" Lone Moon frowned and turned around. No. She hurriedly shook her head, then pointed to the front, and said with some apprehension, "It's in front, in the direction where the monster appeared. There seems to be something." Lone Moon paused and turned to look, only to see that the originally empty space suddenly shook. As if a curtain had been lifted, a large number of palaces began to appear, vaguely looking like a large sect. It's the Sacred Medicine sect," someone exclaimed, subconsciously wanting to go forward, but because of Lone Moon and the other two, he did not move, only looking at them questioningly. It seemed like this place was previously hidden in another space, because of the spatially. Now that the spatially was gone, it was naturally released. These cultivators were all here in search of opportunities. This Sacred Medicine sect was originally everyone's destination. Lone Moon was not interested in this, so naturally he did not stop them. After using his divine perception to check that there was no danger, he allowed them to enter. Everyone's faces lit up, and they all bowed politely to them, then flew into the palace, completely changing their previous desire to win the hearts of women, completely treating them like unreachable seniors. Chef, on the other hand, scanned the palace that suddenly appeared, and subconsciously asked, "Father Neo, don't you think this palace? It's too complete." Lone Moon finished, frowning even more deeply. He looked up at the mountain gate in front of them, where the words Sacred Medicine Sect hung high. According to Lu Lin, this Eraton abyss had been here for many years. However, the Sacred Medicine Sect was far too well preserved. It didn't look like it had been destroyed in the past. "Let's look around," Lone Moon instructed, and the few of them flew up on their swords, patrolling the entire sect a few times. Apart from the lack of any living aura, they still did not find anything. Instead, the cultivators of Dawning Pill sect came back with a large pile of things. Because this sect was well preserved, the things were very easy to find. They were all piled up in the storeroom. "Senior, we found the heritage of the Sacred Medicine sect in the Dharma depository." A female cultivator handed over a storage bag, looking like she was about to hand it over, not at all wanting to keep it for herself. Even the other female cultivators did the same, all of them coming over as soon as they found something. Lone Moon hesitated. These people were really honest, so he shook his head and said, "What you found is yours. We don't need these." The cultivator looked troubled. "But it's all thanks to you that we found the Sacred Medicine sect. By right, these things should belong to him. Besides, if not for them, they would probably have died in the mouth of that demon beast." The few of them tried to persuade him a few more times, seeing that he really had no intention of keeping them, then turned and left. Lone Moon once again searched the empty sect, but still did not find anything. His expression darkened again. Strange. Why would spatially hide this place? There was clearly nothing special about it. Should we go take a look at the entrance? Shenning suddenly spoke up. "Entrance? What entrance?" Lone Moon paused, suddenly recalling that when spatially appeared, it seemed to have disguised itself as a door. Could it really be related to the mountain gate? He subconsciously looked towards the mountain gate, and coincidentally, a cultivator of Dawning Pill sect was about to step out. The moment she took a step, the originally empty mountain gate was covered in a layer of mist. The whole thing shook, and suddenly, a cold aura rushed out from the gate, and the surrounding temperature dropped. "Holy shit!" Lone Moon exclaimed. Chef had already moved one step ahead of her, forming a sword light that crashed towards the female cultivator at the gate, sending her flying far away from the mountain gate. That was the ghost chi of the netherworld. Chapter 620. A transparent barrier suddenly appeared at the mountain gate, and a large amount of ghost chi swarmed out from it, instantly sweeping across the entire sect. For a moment, the temperature plummeted, and it was as cold as ice. Shrill, ear-piercing ghost cries came from within. The ghost chi of the netherworld was different from ordinary ones. It was a place that only allowed souls to exist. Naturally, it had the power to absorb souls. The cultivators who had not even cultivated immortal bodies naturally could not withstand it. Almost in an instant, apart from Xin Ying and the other two, everyone's divine souls began to become unstable. They looked confused. Some golden core cultivators even had signs of their souls leaving their bodies. Loman's expression darkened. He immediately flew over. With a wave of his hand, a sealing array sealed the entire mountain gate. The ghost cries stopped. Everyone's eyes gradually became clear. However, their divine souls were still unstable. The few nascent soul cultivators were still fine. But the other golden core cultivators could not stand still and started to vomit blood. Say, Senior. Lulin managed to stabilize her primordial spirit. She looked up at the people in front of her in confusion. The other cultivators also looked confused. What was that just now? Loman's expression darkened. He scanned the crowd and said, "This is not something you can handle. Leave this place." With that said, he conjured a seal with one hand. Instantly, everyone's jade token floated up. He tightened his grip, and everyone's jade token was crushed. In the next moment, he activated the large-scale transportation array outside the corroding vacant valley. Say, before Lu Lin could even speak, all the Dawning Pill sect cultivators had already been teleported out, instantly clearing the area. I Ching flew over with Shun Ying in his arms. He looked up at the mountain gate that was already emitting dense ghost chi. He frowned and said, "This is a realm gate." Lone Moon nodded. Naturally, he also saw the problem. This should be the realm gate to the underworld. And it looked like it had been here for a long time. The human world has its own original source to guide souls. Why did they purposely open a gate to the underworld? If it was the immortal and divine worlds, it could be said that there was a problem. But the living beings in the human world could not withstand the ghost chi of the underworld. Moreover, after they died, they would naturally enter the underworld. What was the point of opening a gate here? And they purposely used the spatial separation to hide it. It looks like we'll only know the answer to this question after we enter the underworld. Lone Moon pointed at the mountain gate in front of them. Without hesitation, I Ching set up a defensive array around them before walking towards the realm gate. In the next moment, they arrived in another world. The darkness around them was even thicker, as if it had materialized and slid past them. It brought with it a bone-chilling sensation, and it was getting thicker and thicker, giving them the illusion that something was seeping into their bodies. Wait a minute. It wasn't an illusion. There really was something bone-chilling that was drilling into their bodies. Chef, Lone Moon reminded them loudly. The two of them flew on their swords at the same time, wanting to rush out. But that feeling was like a shadow following them. This darkness seemed endless. And no matter what they did, they could not get rid of it. Moreover, the divine power in their bodies seemed to be scattered by that bone-piercing cold. Up, Shining suddenly said. The two of them paused and immediately changed their direction, heading straight up. As they went higher and higher, the darkness around them did indeed lighten a little. The horizon faintly revealed some green, and the bone-chilling cold around them also faded. The few of them looked down and realized that the whole area below them was occupied by a boundless watery area. But it was pitch black all over, and it was spreading to every corner. And the place they just came out from was right in the center of that darkness. Thick black covered the whole underworld, and they could faintly feel that it was spreading to every small world, just like the plane's original source. Lone Moon finally understood what this black was, and subconsciously exclaimed. Then he paused. That's not right. Why is it black? They had seen the plane tree before. It was clearly a big green tree. By right, the color of the original source should be the same as the plane tree. Just like how Chef's side was gold, and his side was purple, this plane should also be green. Unless someone changed the original source. I Ching said directly. Lone Moon's heart sank. He instantly remembered the plane tree that was about to be taken over by Black, and the realm gate, and the so-called fallen knight just now. Instantly, he understood what was going on. The invaders had taken over, and changed the netherworld's planar origin from the very beginning. Then through the realm gate, the altered planar origin's power flowed through every small world in advance. Step by step, they devoured the entire plane, until it completely collapsed. It was no wonder that Chao Kun suddenly became so weak. This was practically like a slow-acting virus invading, changing bit by bit from the original source. What was more troublesome was that the original source was already like this, and they had no idea how to make it recover at all. You are the reinforcements that Chao Kun invited? Suddenly, a cold female voice sounded behind them. Lone Moon was shocked, and immediately took a few steps back, putting some distance between them. Only then did he see that a person suddenly appeared behind him, her whole body surrounded by layers of black original source chi, with a cold and gloomy aura. From the figure, he could tell that it was a woman. More importantly, her body also had the aura of a manager, just that it was not very strong. You are the person who invaded this plane? Loman's heart sank. Not daring to let his guard down, he directly summoned his long sword. Invasion! The woman suddenly began to laugh maniacally, looking at the few of them even more fiercely. Is that what Chao Kun told you? To me, you are the real invaders? Suddenly, she waved her hand, and the originally calm original source below began to surge, instantly turning into numerous streams of water that directly attacked them, as if thousands of invisible giant hands were attacking them. Lone Moon released his divine perception, and as he dodged the attacks around him, he waved his sword, intending to counterattack. Suddenly, his body froze. The god power that was originally circulating freely seemed to be suppressed, unable to circulate. No, not just their god power. Even their power as managers seemed to be suppressed by something. It was the thing that had seeped into their bodies just now. Suddenly, they remembered that when they first entered the underworld, the aura that followed them like a shadow seemed to be the black original source chi below. That aura seemed to be suppressing their power. You invaders, all of you deserve to die. The woman's voice was cold, and a huge aura exploded from her body. The original source below churned even more violently, directly forming a huge wave, looking like it was about to drown the few of them. Lone Moon gripped the sword in his hand tightly, turned back and reminded, the original source here can suppress our power, chef. Use your sword chi. I Ching nodded, directly releasing a sky full of sword chi. Countless sword lights appeared, forming an airtight net, just as the huge wave was about to be blocked. Suddenly, a white light flashed in front of them. A familiar figure cut through the void, appearing in front of the huge wave. With a backhand, he conjured a Dharma spell that they had never seen before. Suddenly, green light shone, directly dispersing the huge black wave. Chao Kun? Lone Moon hesitated. The person who came was manager Chao Kun, who had fainted under the plane tree previously. Quite timely. Chapter 621. My lords, are you all right? Chao Kun looked at the three of them anxiously after he destroyed the source. Lone Moon frowned and glanced at the worried Chao Kun. After a while he nodded and said, I'm fine. That's good. He heaved a sigh of relief. Just as he was about to say something, the black source beneath him started to churn even more violently. Chao Kun. The eyes of the woman in black instantly turned red. She glared at Chao Kun, and the hatred in her eyes seemed to be overflowing. The black aura around her became thicker, and she directly rushed towards him. You deserve to die. Chao Kun was shocked. He instinctively summoned a barrier in front of him. The green light bounced back, and the black around the woman dissipated a little. Chao Kun's expression darkened. He waved his sword at the woman, and turned to the three of them. Thank you for your help. I was able to find this intruder. This place is too dangerous. In order to avoid being affected by the polluted source, please return quickly. He looked at the woman anxiously and said, Only I can completely purify the source of this plane. Leave the rest to me. The three of them exchanged a look, but did not speak. My lords, please leave quickly. Don't worry about me. Chao Kun continued in a low voice. No matter what, I will protect my own plane. With that said, he did not wait for their reply. He charged out with his sword and fought with the black-robed woman. The two of them moved extremely fast. In an instant, only two shadows, one black and one green, were left in the air. Chao Kun was right. If they wanted this plane to recover, they had to restore the source to its original state. But the plane's source was the foundation of the plane. No one else could interfere with it. Only a spirit seed, or a manager could change the source. Lone Moon and I Ching were managers of other planes. Not only could they not control the source here, it even suppressed their powers. So apart from Chao Kun himself, no one else could interfere. Of course, a cheat like Shining was an exception. The two of them fought more and more intensely. Chao Kun was already injured. Now that he had lost control of the source, although he was not too badly injured, he was still at a disadvantage. However, this battle still had some effect. At the very least, circles of green origin chi appeared around his body. He was trying to restore this plane step by step, but such efforts were like a drop in the bucket for the origin that had been completely dyed black. After a short while, Chao Kun could no longer hold on. Master Wei. I Ching turned to look at Shining and spoke hesitantly. Leave or stay? Lone Moon nudged Shining and asked. Aren't we going to help? Shining took a few bites of her fruit and said slowly, there's no hurry. Lone Moon and Chef exchanged a look. They seemed to have thought of something. Their eyes narrowed, but they did not move. Seeing that Chao Kun was unable to hold on any longer, even his body was becoming unstable. He gritted his teeth and circulated the origin energy he had converted with great difficulty to block the attacks. He cried out with a pained expression. Just who are you? Why are you doing this? Do you know how many living beings in this world will die because of the conversion of the origin energy? Ha 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 ha. The woman suddenly laughed maniacally. The madness in her eyes deepened, and the deep hatred seemed to solidify. Chao Kun, these words coming from your mouth are practically sarcastic. Don't you know best why I'm like this? Chao Kun faltered. After a while, he seemed to suddenly remember something. His eyes widened. You're Mu Xiang. Why? Now you're pretending not to know me? The woman laughed coldly. Chao Kun faltered and then shook his head. Impossible. How could you open the plane door? Humph. You think that by sealing the plane, no one can enter? So before this, someone helped you invade. Chao Kun's expression changed. He looked at the woman even more pained. I never thought that you would be the one who changed the source. Why? You were once a member of this plane. Now you want to join forces with other invaders to destroy this plane? Why? Of course it's to kill you. The darkness around the woman became even thicker. The darkness below also surged even more. As long as I can kill you, you scum, I'm willing to pay any price. Chao Kun's expression darkened. He looked at the other party with a pained expression. Everything I've done is to protect this plane, for the 3,000 worlds, for the living beings in this world. Since you've already been banished from this plane, you shouldn't have invaded this place. This plane has nothing to do with you anymore. Who says it has nothing to do with me? The woman called Mu Xiang became even angrier. I've already returned. Don't think that you'll have an easy time. Just who should be banished? Chao Kun, do you really need me to remind you who is the real Mu Xiang? Chao Kun frowned. He cut her off with a serious expression. I didn't expect that after so long. You're still so stubborn. For your own selfish desires, you can abandon the tens of thousands of living beings in this plane. Shut up. Mu Xiang's expression changed. She seemed to have thought of something that she hated. She was so hateful that her entire body started trembling. Her eyes seemed to be spitting fire. All of this is caused by you. It's you. Chao Kun, you deserve to die. With that said, she seemed to be unable to bear it anymore. She directly rushed over without a care. Chao Kun closed his eyes and took a deep breath. No matter who helped you come back, even if I have to risk my life today, I won't let you harm this plane again. With that said, his body flashed with green light, and he also rushed over. The two of them fought again. But compared to before, Mu Xiang's attacks were even more ferocious. She was simply fighting with no regard for her life. She seemed to have been provoked by something. Every attack was a desperate attack. It was as if she wanted to kill the other party, even at the risk of getting injured. I Ching frowned. This kind of fighting style was a little too impatient. It gave the opponent a chance to breathe. On the other hand, Chao Kun fought very calmly from beginning to end. The green light around his body also became brighter and brighter. Even the center of the original source that stretched as far as the eye could see slowly emitted spots of green light, and slowly pushed forward in all directions. But this speed was still too slow. Chao Kun would eventually run out of energy. After all, the entire original source was almost controlled by the opponent. Unless someone helped to restrain Mu Xiang and let him focus on returning the original source. Of course, this person had better be a manager. Lone Moon raised his brows and turned to look at Shening purposely. Are we going to continue watching? Shening turned back to look at him. She finished the fruit in her hand and took out a plate of pastries. It's not time yet. A hint of understanding flashed across Lone Moon's eyes. He directly kept his sword. All right, up to you. With that said, he snatched the plate from her hand and watched the show in peace. Shening. Master, I have some here. Chef at the side hurriedly replenished. On the other side, the two fought even more intensely. All around them were the sounds of various spells colliding. Chao Kun's body was already covered in blood. His movements were also slowing down. It seemed like he could not hold on for much longer. So he looked over expectantly. But the three on this side did not seem to receive his pleading gaze at all. They stood at the side with no intention of coming over to help. Instead, Mu Xiang fought more and more fiercely. Although she was also seriously injured by Chao Kun, her movements did not slow down at all. Seeing that Chao Kun was about to be unable to hold on any longer, he turned back to look at the three in the distance. Gritting his teeth, he seemed to have made up his mind about something. He used all his strength to wave a palm to force the other party to retreat. He turned and flew down towards the original source below. He directly fell into the only green spot in the center that had recovered. Almost at the instant he landed, he directly threw out a Dharma artifact and began to conjure a spell. For a moment, the pitch-black underworld seemed to be split open. A blinding green light lit up. Chao Kun, how dare you? Mu Xiang was shocked. Her entire person seemed to break down. She rushed over crazily, but was repelled by that green light. Yet she climbed up again. As she rushed over even more crazily, she shouted, Chao Kun! Chao Kun! Chao Kun! Each cry was more shrill than the one before. It's okay now. Shening, who had finished 3 plates of pastries, suddenly stood up. Lone Moon, why don't you freaking eat dinner before going? Winky face. Chapter 622. The green light grew brighter and brighter. The light around the Dharma artifact became even more dazzling. Even the originally pitch-black underworld seemed to be dyed, quickly turning back to green. Mu Xiang's expression became uglier and uglier, as though she wanted to rush past that Dharma artifact crazily. But she couldn't reach it no matter what. Instead, she was covered in cuts and bruises from the impact of that green original source. Stop. Stop. She gritted her teeth, mobilized all the black original source around her, and rushed over without a care. Chao Kun's expression darkened, instantly conjured several spirit swords, taking the opportunity to attack. Mu Xiang ignored the opponent's attack, stretched out her bloody hand, and instead sped up, risking the danger of being stabbed, and was about to reach that Dharma artifact. But another hand reached out from the side and picked it up first. A figure suddenly appeared in the middle, and at the same time, the spirit swords conjured by Chao Kun seemed to have encountered some obstruction and directly dissipated. Shening glanced at the little green ball in her hand, her eyes narrowed, and her palm tightened. Instantly, that soaring green light on the ball dimmed. Even the green original source that was continuously changing below stopped, as though the pause button had been pressed. Mas, Madam. Chao Kun was stunned and looked at Shening in disbelief. Why are you doing this? Instead, Mu Xiang reacted first. Without the suppression of that green light, the black aura around her rose sharply. as though she was in a killing frenzy, and without thinking, she directly raised her sword and slashed towards Shining, who was closest to her. These invaders all deserve to die. Master. I Ching, who was a step slower, was shocked. Just as he was about to attack, he saw Shining suddenly stretch out a finger, and with a series of cracking sounds, the sword in the other party's hand broke inch by inch, and before it could even touch the other party's palm, it had already turned into ashes. Mu Xiang could not retract her momentum in time, and could only watch as that finger poked all the way to her forehead. For a moment, the energy around her dispersed, and could no longer condense. The black aura also directly dispersed, revealing her original figure. Her heart sank, and she raised her hand, wanting to continue attacking, but she could not exert any strength, and could only wave her empty fists and hit forward. Unfortunately, she was shorter than Shining. She was blocked by Xinying's finger on her forehead. Her arms were not long enough to hit Shining. She could only draw circles on one side. The scene suddenly became comical. In an instant, it went from a high-end King's game between managers to a Bronze's game between kids. I Ching, who rushed over. Lone Moon, who had been watching the entire show. It wasn't easy for Shining to find someone shorter than her, so she was trying her best to humiliate him. This was too shameful. Why did shorties make things difficult for shorties? Let me go. Let me go. Mu Xiang's anger grew as she glared at Shining. You despicable invaders. Oh. Shining paused and tilted her head. But I didn't grab you. Mu Xiang stiffened, as if she had just reacted. She was only blocked from moving forward and was not caught. She turned around and wanted to retreat. The corner of Loman's mouth twitched. He raised his hand and set up a sword array. Thin and dense sword chi instantly trapped Mu Xiang, who had just regained her senses. Catch her now. Straight face. Did everyone who fought with Shining have a drop in their IQ? It was already too late for Mu Xiang to run. She wanted to break out of the sword chi, but realized that it was useless. Her body was empty, and she couldn't use any power at all. Her face paled instantly. She looked at Shining in front of her in disbelief. What did you do to me? She was clearly still in the plane. Why couldn't she use her own power? Not only that, even her connection with the original source seemed to be cut off. It's convenient to talk. Shining replied. She habitually took out a fruit and took a bite. Let's talk about a fruit. All of you deserve to die. Her expression became even crazier. She had no intention of communicating at all. Her eyes were fixed on the green ball Dharma artifact in Xinying's other hand. You like it? Shining pinched the little ball and handed it over. I'll give it to you. Mu Xiang was stunned. Even the hatred on her face froze. My lord. Chao Kuan also rushed over from below. He glanced at the trapped Mu Xiang. A hint of joy flashed across his eyes. He hurriedly cupped his fists and bowed to the few of them. Thank you three for your help. This plane can finally be saved. Don't be in a hurry to thank me. Lone Moon dodged his bow. He smiled and said, whether I'm helping you or not, it's not certain yet. His expression froze for a moment. He immediately regained his lost look. His eyes swept across the green ball in Xinying's hand. Lord Loman's words, what do you mean? We just feel that you seem to have some things that you haven't explained to us clearly. For example, Loman's smile deepened. He turned to look at the people in the sword array. About her. Chao Kuan's face paled for a moment. A hint of panic flashed across his face. He didn't seem to know how to answer. Mu Xiang, who was at the side, suddenly laughed. Haha. So you didn't tell them at all what you did. Chao Kuan, you're still as despicable and shameless as before. Shut up. Chao Kuan's gaze sharpened. A murderous intent surfaced in his eyes. Why? Did I say something wrong? Mu Xiang laughed even more wildly, but there was a hint of desolation in her eyes. Why don't you tell them how you came to this plane? And how you snatched this plane from my hands step by step? Snatched the plane? The three of them were stunned. They turned to look at Chao Kuan. So Mu Xiang was the original manager of this plane? No wonder she had the aura of a manager on her. They originally thought that she was the same as the person who invaded Chef's plane. She used to be a manager of another plane. They didn't expect her to be from this plane. But Chao Kuan was indeed a manager. How could there be two managers in one plane? A hint of panic flashed across Chao Kuen's eyes. He hurriedly retorted, "This is the choice of the world's consciousness. This plane chose me." Bullsh asterisk T. The anger in Mu Xiang's eyes intensified. She glared at him, as if she wanted to swallow him alive. "Do you think I can't tell? You came here to obtain the ability of a manager, but you don't have the right to be recognized by the world's consciousness. That's why you killed all the living beings in this world and forcefully changed the original source. If not for that, how could you become a manager?" Chao Kuen's face darkened. The murderous aura around him intensified. He retorted directly, "Don't forget that the one who destroyed the world and was reborn was you." "Shut up." Mu Xiang's eyes turned red instantly. "You still have the cheek to mention the destruction of the world. It was you who opened the plane door and let those invaders from the Big Tao organization in to destroy as they pleased. You made me think that the plane was close to collapse. That was why I was in such a hurry to retrieve the original source. All the living beings in the world were born from the original source. Retrieving the original source was equivalent to destroying the world." Chapter 623. You can't even stop an invader. You're not qualified to be a manager at all. Chao Kuen's gaze turned colder, as if he had found his courage. The more he spoke, the more confident he became. "This plane being in your hands is the real disaster for the living beings in this world. I just made the most correct choice." "You're talking nonsense." Mu Xiang's aura was unstable. She wanted to rush out of the sword array but was blocked again. "Chao Kuen, it's clearly you who made this plane full of holes, the living beings in misery and suffering, and even caused me to drift in chaos for so many years. You've never cared about this plane. In your eyes, it's just a tool from start to end. Utter nonsense." He snorted, his gaze darkening. "I thought you were just impulsive at that time. I didn't expect you to be so stubborn. How many living beings in this world will die because they can't withstand the forceful conversion of the original source this time? This plane has already been destroyed by you once. Now you want it to be destroyed a second time. It's clearly you who's distorting the truth." Mu Xiang was anxious. She started to frantically rush out of the sword array. "Three sirs." Chao Kuen turned to look at Lone Moon and the others. He directly cupped his fists and said, "This is a feud between me and her. No matter who's right or wrong, it has nothing to do with the living beings in this world. I can stop being a manager, but I definitely can't let her continue to convert the original source. I hope that the three of you will not fall into her trap on the account of these living beings." Lone Moon glanced at Chao Kuen, who was full of worry. Hearing this, he finally understood something, which meant that Mu Xiang was indeed the manager of this plane. It was just that she was later replaced by Chao Kuen. This replacement method was not very honorable. It was obvious that the previous Big Tao organization also had a hand in it. That was why the other party had such a huge hatred towards him. But the conversion of the original source would indeed have a huge impact on the living beings. The fallen night they heard in the small world previously was the impact brought about by the original source. Those who died because they couldn't withstand the conversion of the original source. And those who became blue-skinned, it was the same. It was just the extent of the impact. If this continued, when the original source of this plane completely turned black, the impact would be even greater. But Lone Moon laughed. It had to be said that Chao Kuen was a very smart person. Even if the secret of his plot to seize the plane was discovered, he also knew what was best for him. Just look at what he was saying now. He was worried about the survival of the plane, worried about the living beings of the world, and said such righteous words. He acted like a manager who was willing to compromise for the sake of the overall situation, and quietly put a big hat on them of plunging lives into misery and suffering. The possibility of them changing sides had been completely blocked. He could not help but turn back to look at the people in the sword formation. Mu Xiang's eyes turned even redder, but she could not resist at all. A trace of despair appeared on his face, and he glared at them fiercely. If you want to kill me, then kill me. As long as I have a wisp of remnant soul, I won't let you off. My lord, if we let her. We're not interested in your trivial matters. He narrowed his eyes and scanned him from head to toe. Why don't you explain to us how you woke up so coincidentally after we entered the underworld? Chao Kuan's expression changed. Why can't you say it? Lo Moon laughed coldly. Why don't I say it? You knew from the start that she was the one who invaded. You also knew that she was changing her original source. It's just that the underworld was sealed, and you couldn't enter at all. You could only find someone capable enough to enter, so you came to us. You used us to open the realm gate, and then reap the benefits. My lord, I'm not. He panicked and hurriedly explained. I really didn't mean to use you. Everything I said is true. She wasn't the only one who invaded this plane. I really couldn't deal with her, so I came to you. Is that so? Lo Moon's smile deepened. Then you mean to say that you knew the situation, but deliberately used us to be cannon fodder to scout the way? Wait until you were sure it was safe before coming out. No, my lord, I really did it for the plane. What does your plane have to do with me? Playing moral blackmail with him depended on whether they were willing or not. Chao Kuan's face turned even paler. He could not find any words to refute. Mu Xiang, who was at the side, laughed out loud. Ha ha ha. Admit it, Chao Kuan. You've always been such a despicable person. In order to achieve your goals, you'll do anything. You. Chao Kuan's face turned even uglier. He was stuck and could not say a word. After a while, he looked at Shining frantically and said, My lord, please believe me. I didn't mean to use you. Shining tilted her head. After a while she replied, Oh. What did "oh" mean? Shining ignored him. She took a step forward and looked at the person in the sword array. Come, let's finish talking about a fruit. With that said, she took a bite of the fruit and continued. Can you tell me, who sent you back to this plane? Who is he? Mu Xiang was stunned for a moment. She subconsciously said, Why should I tell you? Because we won't interfere in the matter between you and Chao Kuan. Lo Moon directly interrupted. My lord. Chao Kuan's expression changed. All right. Something flashed in Mu Xiang's eyes. She sized her up and hesitated for a while before saying, I don't know who that person is, but he was indeed the one who opened the sealed plane and helped me come back. What does that person look like? I don't know. She shook her head. His ability far exceeds that of a manager. I couldn't see his face at all. He just suddenly appeared in the chaos. He said that he would help me seek justice. Then he sent me back here. And then, after he told me how to change the original source, he disappeared. She seemed to think of something she could not understand. She frowned and said, I never saw him again after that. I see. Shen Ying's eyes narrowed. She took a step forward and directly stuffed the little green ball in her hand into her hand. Thank you. Mu Xiang was stunned. Her eyes widened. She looked at the green ball in her hand in disbelief. You. My lord. Chao Kuan's face turned pale instantly. Shening did not stop. She directly turned and opened the plane gate. As she walked, she said, I'm so hungry. Chef, Father Neo is going home to eat. Yes, master. No problem, master. Lone Moon glanced at the two of them. He also directly followed in. The moment the plane gate closed, they could still faintly hear the sounds of fighting coming from behind. But this time, Chao Kuan was probably dead. Chao Kuan, it's time to settle the grudge of the plane. Chapter 624. Is this considered interfering or not? Lone Moon couldn't help but ask once they returned to the divine realm. He didn't see it just now, but now that he thought about it, that green ball was actually a spirit seed that hadn't taken form yet. That was why Chao Kuan released it so easily just now. I thought you wouldn't help either side. With Shen Ying's temper, it would be normal for her to beat Chao Kuan up after knowing the truth. But she didn't move just now, so he thought she didn't want to meddle. After all, that was someone else's plain matter. And although that Chao Kuan was despicable, he was right. If Mu Xiang wanted to take back the plane, she might really have to take back all the living beings again. Shening looked up at him and tilted her head. What's owed has to be returned. She thought about it and added, and the plane can't be without a manager. How can there not be a manager? Aren't there two? Wait. He stopped mid-sentence. You mean Chao Kuan actually hasn't become a real manager yet? Shining nodded. Without the recognition of the world's consciousness, it won't work. Even if the world's consciousness was forcibly wiped out, fake would never be real. That's not right. Lone Moon frowned. If he wasn't a manager from the start, then why would he have the aura of a manager? You and Chef have it too. Shining replied casually. What has this got to do with me and Chef? We were originally. He faltered and instantly understood something, his eyes widening. You're not trying to say that Chao Kun was originally Mu Xiang's assistant? Shining nodded. Holy shit. So that was the case, according to this, that Chao Kun was too much of a scumbag. Assistants became assistants because of the power of managers. Chao Kun was obviously not satisfied with being an assistant forever. So he colluded with those people from the Big Dao organization to scheme against Mu Xiang. No wonder after Mu Xiang destroyed the world, he only chased Mu Xiang out of the plane and didn't kill her directly. He was afraid that he would be affected too. His ability now was no different from a manager. It was only because all living beings were destroyed and the world's consciousness disappeared that he no longer suppressed it. It wasn't that management was better than management. Even he and Chef couldn't see the difference. What kind of scum was this? Master, is the person who helped Mu Xiang come back a monitor? It was rare that Chef did not immediately turn around to cook, but suddenly asked. Lo Moon thought of this too. That's right, only monitors can surpass managers. Don't tell me that the person who helped her is Sister Jing or Mi Le. The moment he finished speaking, he immediately denied it. No, it can't be them. Mi Le was beaten up by Xin Jing, and most likely still hasn't recovered yet. How could he possibly go and interfere in Mu Xiang's matters? It was even more impossible for Xin Jing. Regarding the matters of the Big Dao Convention, she already knew. If she was the one who did this, it was impossible for her not to inform them, and the timing didn't match either. Who could that person be? Could it be that a new monitor has appeared? Maybe? Shening finished the fruit in her hand and pinched the core in her hand. She narrowed her eyes and looked thoughtful. Possible? Shening threw away the fruit core in her hand before answering. Do you still remember the reason why my older sister did not discover the Big Dao organization? Isn't it because of you? Lone Moon blurted out. Didn't they say that in the same area, normally there wouldn't be two monitors? Because Shening was in the immortal spirit plane. That was why he and Sister Jing did not discover the Big Dao organization. Mila had tricked them into the Void Land because of this back then, wanting to test if Shening was... Wait a minute. Xin Jing seemed to have said that Shening was not a monitor. Then the mutual shielding between monitors would not exist. Which meant, back then, Sister Jing and the rest did not discover the Big Dao organization because they were helping Mu Xiang. Lone Moon was shocked and frowned after a while. But, if he's really a monitor, the Big Dao organization has existed for so long. Why hasn't he dealt with it all this while? There are only two possibilities. Can't deal with it, or doesn't want to deal with it. I Ching guessed. He could even send Mu Xiang back, and know the way to change the original source. That proves that he definitely has that ability. Lone Moon was even more puzzled. But if he doesn't want to deal with it, why would he help Mu Xiang? Unless he's not a monitor. Shening finished and turned to look at the two of them, her gaze darkening. Then that's even worse. Lone Moon. I Ching. The two's expressions darkened as well. Indeed, it would be fine if the other party was a monitor. No matter what, the existence of a monitor was only to maintain the peace between the various planes. But if he wasn't, then his purpose of shielding Xin Jing and Mi Li's senses towards the Big Dao organization and letting Mu Xiang return to the plane must have a deeper meaning, especially when he still possessed powers that surpassed that of a manager. Such a person hiding in the dark alone, no matter how one thought about it, it just didn't feel safe. Lone Moon suddenly had a vague premonition that another cheat was about to appear. Just as he was about to discuss in detail with Shening, the storage bag by his side suddenly moved. There was faintly the chi of the original source seeping out. He paused and thought of something, then hurriedly took out a communication talisman and transmitted a bit of immortal chi into it. Shorty? This was Invincible Sect's communication talisman. But only Shorty could send a communication talisman to the divine realm and still carry the chi of the original source. Elder Lone Moon. Indeed, in the next moment, Meng Po's somewhat anxious voice sounded from the talisman. Is Sect Master with you? What's wrong? She opened her mouth to look for Shening. Something happened. It's the original source of the River of Forgetfulness. It seems there's some problem. What? Lone Moon was shocked. Even Chef was stunned for a moment. He didn't feel anything strange. So he directly stepped forward and asked, what happened? I don't know either. Shorty became even more anxious. There was even a faint sound of crying. I sensed the original source of the entire plane, but couldn't find the reason. But in the middle of the River of Forgetfulness suddenly appeared a... She paused, as if she didn't know how to explain. Elder Lone Moon, you'll know once you come back. Lone Moon looked towards Chef. I Ching's expression darkened. He directly turned to ask Shening. Master. Shening nodded. Got it. Lone Moon then instructed Shorty. We'll go to the underworld immediately. No, it's not the underworld. Mengpa replied again. The problem is in the immortal realm. I'm in the sect. Lone Moon paused, then kept the transmission talisman, turned and directly opened the passage back to Invincible Sect. Almost in the blink of an eye, they returned to the rear hall of Invincible Sect. They carefully sensed Shorty's position and found that she was at the entrance of the Heavenly Palace. The few of them turned and flew over. From afar, they saw many disciples gathered at the entrance of the Heavenly Palace. As if something had happened, their expressions were not very good. What happened? Lone Moon directly asked. Only then did those people at the entrance turn their heads. At once, everyone's faces instantly lit up. Sect Master! They exclaimed in unison. In the next moment, everyone cupped their fists and bowed. Disciples of Invincible Sect welcome Sect Master back to the mountain. Lone Moon, I Ching. So the two of them were actually transparent. Chapter 625. Hey! Shening waved her hand in greeting. Everyone's eyes lit up. Lone Moon's mouth twitched. Yu Hong, why are all of you gathered at the entrance of the Heavenly Palace? Sect Master Elder Lone Moon. Yu Hong first looked at Shening, then turned and pointed behind her. It's Shorty and junior sister Qingyu. All the disciples made way for them. They then saw that outside the Heavenly Palace, there was light from array formations everywhere. A few large arrays appeared in the sky at the same time, emitting faint golden light from time to time. Immortal chi surged around them, and they could faintly see the shadow of God power. This was the divine race's sealing array. Lone Moon was shocked. He scanned with his divine perception, and indeed saw Shorty in the center of the array formation. There were two figures beside her. It was her master Roasted Chicken Gal and Feng Ying. Shorty suddenly came out to set up the array just now. We don't know what happened, Yu Hong answered. Lone Moon frowned and said in a low voice, this is the divine race's array formation. You can't get too close. Hurry and bring all the disciples back to the sect. Divine race. Yu Hong was shocked, but she did not ask further. She just looked at Shening hesitantly. Sect Master. Don't worry, we won't leave for now. Yes. Yu Hong was delighted. Then, she turned around and beckoned the reluctant disciples to leave to return. Shorty is in the eye of the array. Lone Moon carefully looked at the array formation in the sky. He found the direction to enter and then turned back to say, let's go over. With that said, the three of them flew over. In a moment, they flew past the golden light and reached the center. When they reached the eye of the array, they realized that Roasted Chicken Gal seemed to be injured. Feng Ying was carrying her and standing behind Shorty. The two of them were surrounded by a green protective circle that looked like a code. Ding! Welcome, Big Boss. The first to notice them was not Shorty, but the parenting system on Feng Ying. Even Feng Ying's body swayed. Perhaps because he was still carrying someone in his arms, the system did not make him kneel down directly. Sect Master. Shorty was overjoyed. She then stopped the array formation in her hands and walked quickly to welcome them. You're finally back. Hey Shorty. Shening waved her hand. Lone Moon landed first and asked anxiously, what exactly happened? Big boss. Feng also rushed over with a person in his arms. He looked at Shenning anxiously and said, "Can you save Qingyu quickly?" She suddenly fainted. Even the system could not find the problem. "As long as you save her, I can't do." "What happened to roasted chicken gal?" Lone Moon frowned. "Shorty's forgetfulness." Shorty's expression darkened. She turned her head and pointed to a spot below. "The river of forgetfulness in the immortal realm suddenly has a problem." The three of them looked in the direction she was pointing and subconsciously activated the power of the manager. Almost instantly, the ethereal scene before them changed. Suddenly, a golden river appeared. This was a part of the river of forgetfulness in the immortal realm. The array that Shorty had just set up had sealed off one of the areas. And in the middle of that area, there was a very obvious black spot, as if there was a hole in the bottom of the river. "What is this?" Lone Moon was stunned. Why would a hole suddenly appear in the river of forgetfulness? "I'm not sure." Shorty shook her head. "I only sensed the sudden appearance of this hole, and there seemed to be a soul missing from the river. Master happened to pass by, and her soul was almost sucked into the hole. I stabilized her primordial spirit, but she never woke up." Lone Moon glanced at the black hole in the river, then turned to I Ching at the side. "Chef, hurry and take a look at roasted chicken gal." "What's going on?" Chef was the manager of this plane. Only he could tell what the problem was. I Ching took 2 steps forward. He put a finger on Qingyu's forehead and sensed carefully. His expression darkened. Suddenly, he conjured a seal with both hands and left a mark on her forehead. Then, he turned and grabbed at the black hole in the river of forgetfulness. He seemed to be grabbing something. In the next moment, a white light shot up from below and entered Qingyu's forehead. Roasted chicken gal, who was originally lifeless, heaved a sigh of relief. The stagnant life force in her body began to flow again. Her complexion slowly turned better. Little you. Feng was overjoyed. "Feng?" Roasted chicken gal opened her eyes in confusion. She paused for a moment. Then she fixed her gaze on Shenning. Her eyes widened. "Little Ing, you're back." With that said, she pushed the man beside her away without hesitation and hugged Shenning. Lone Moon, I Ching, Feng. Indeed, in the eyes of diehard fans, everyone else was transparent. "Chef." Lone Moon turned to look at I Ching. "What you just called back from the hole was roasted chicken gal's soul power." I Ching nodded. He glanced at the black hole below. His expression darkened. Fortunately, it didn't go far. Soul power determined the strength of one's soul. Although losing soul power would not cause one's soul to dissipate, it would cause one to fall into an eternal slumber. But soul power was the power inside the soul. It could not be separated from the soul. What exactly is that black hole? Why can it absorb people's soul power? It's not a hole. I Ching narrowed his eyes. It's a gap. Gap? Lone Moon paused. A moment later his eyes widened. A plain gap. Holy shit. He could not help but curse. That meant that roasted chicken gal almost fell out of the plane just now. Even little Shorty was stunned. "You're saying that there's an intruder in here?" "I can't be sure yet. I just discovered it." I Ching's expression darkened. He turned to look at Shenning beside him. "Master, look. We still have to investigate." Shenning shook her head. Their expressions darkened even more. Lone Moon glanced at roasted chicken gal, who was still leaning weakly on Shenning. "Chef, seal the gap first. We'll talk when we get back." I Ching nodded and flew directly towards the black hole. The power that belonged to a manager spread out instantly. In a short while, the black hole in the river of forgetfulness slowly closed up. Little Shorty also retracted the array that temporarily sealed the river of forgetfulness. The entire river of forgetfulness returned to its original state. Chef flew back. He pulled roasted chicken gal out of his master's arms and threw her back to Feng. Then he flew back with Shenning. The change in the river of forgetfulness this time was too sudden. Most importantly, the three of them did not notice it at all. Even the wristbands on their hands did not give any warning. Logically speaking, it was understandable that Lone Moon and Shenning did not notice it. Chef was a manager. A gap in the plane actually escaped his senses. That was too strange. Lone Moon and Little Shorty searched the surroundings of the River of Forgetfulness for a few days. They did not find any clues. But this plane was indeed missing a soul. Moreover, it was nowhere to be found. That missing soul, could it have been sucked into the chaos? Lone Moon could not help but guess. The plane gap in the River of Forgetfulness did not connect to other planes. It could only lead to the chaos. Very likely. I Ching nodded. He put down the pastry in his hand and said, "Master, can you find out where that soul is?" If it was not in the plane, there was nothing he could do. Chapter 626. Shening picked up a pastry and took a bite. She turned to look at him, then raised her hand to open a light screen. Rows of indecipherable data flashed by quickly. It's not done yet. This data? You haven't been looking for it all this time, have you? Lone Moon looked at her in disbelief. The data did not look like it had just started. He could not help but reach out to touch her forehead. You don't have a fever, do you? She was actually taking the initiative to help. Did she run away from home because of laziness? Shunning. Son of a b****. The area of the chaos is too big. It's not easy to find the lost soul. Shunning said casually. As long as the soul doesn't go far, we should be able to find it. Lone Moon thought of the soul power of roasted chicken gal that Chef had summoned back. He was instantly relieved. If the missing soul really fell into the plane gap by accident, it should not have gone far. It was good enough that they could find it. Then we can only wait now. Lone Moon heaved a sigh of relief. He snatched a pastry and threw it into his mouth. But Chef, you'd better check how the plane gap appeared. And it just happened to appear in the River of Forgetfulness. It would be fine if it was just a coincidence. But if it was an invasion, then this matter was probably not over. I Ching thought of this as well. Frowning, he seemed to have thought of something, and was just about to speak. Just as he was about to speak, Yu Hong suddenly walked in. Sect Master. Immortal Yu Shui under Emperor Biaoting of Qingzhe Continent wishes to see you. She cupped her fists and reported. Who? The three of them paused. Yu Hong paused, then corrected herself. It's Immortal Yu Shui under Emperor Biao who wishes to see you. Oh, little Biao. The three of them suddenly realized. They had heard so many nicknames. They were not used to hearing his real name suddenly. Yes. Yu Hong nodded. In the days that Sect Master and the two elders were away, he came here every day. He has been waiting for Sect Master for many days. What does little Biao want? Lone Moon asked. He even sent someone over. No, not Emperor Biao. Yu Hong shook her head and said. It's Yu Shui who wants to see Sect Master. In the 3,000 years that Elder Lone Moon and Sect Master left, it came here many times. It just so happened that it missed its chance. Yu Shui. Lone Moon frowned. Did they know such a person? Forget it, call him in. Yes. Only then did Yu Hong turn around and walk out. Not long after, she came back with two people who were dressed in white and wrapped up like cotton candy. The one in front looked older and slightly plump. He seemed to be a little excited and walked very quickly, raising his head to look at the three people in the courtyard. His eyes immediately widened and reddened. Then he ran over. Great Immortal. He was running in a hurry and didn't stop properly. He fell down with a plop and rolled all the way over like a snowball. With a bang, he hit the stone table. This bow was a little too much. Yet he acted as if nothing had happened. He reached out and hugged Xinying's leg, crying and sniveling. Great Immortal, that's great. I didn't think that I would be able to see you again in my lifetime. The heavens really have eyes, sob sob sob. Who are you? Xinying tilted her head. I Ching's expression darkened. He directly pulled the white ball off his master's leg. Speak properly. Is my master's leg someone you can hug? It's me. Great Immortal. Yu Shui was stunned. He pointed to his face anxiously and said, I'm a rabbit that eats grass. Rabbit? The three of them were stunned. Wasn't Rabbit teaching in Purple Night Palace? Yu Shui looked back and forth at the three of them. Seeing that everyone still looked confused, he became even more anxious. Suddenly, as if he thought of something, he clapped his hands and said, That's right. Great Immortal has never seen me like this. With that said, he directly conjured a seal on himself. In the next moment, with a puff, his originally simple and honest face changed into a huge rabbit's head. There were even 2 big furry ears on his head. Rabbit! Lone Moon and I Ching were shocked. Only then did they recognize him. Wasn't this the demon monarch rabbit that helped build the house in the realm of 3 purities? So it had a name? Oh, the one that gives carrots. Shunning also remembered. Yes, yes, yes. Rabbit was overjoyed. He hurriedly nodded his head vigorously, shaking the ears on his head. I'm the rabbit that gives carrots. You've ascended. Lone Moon looked him up and down. You're already a Stygian immortal. When did that happen? It's been thousands of years since I ascended. It's all thanks to those demon cores that Great Immortal left for me. Rabbit answered somewhat excitedly. But I'm a demon immortal, and I ascended to Qingzhe continent. That's why I didn't know that Great Immortal was also in the upper realm. Later, I heard the Emperor mention Invincible Sect, so I came looking for you. But I never saw Great Immortal. So that's how it was. Great Immortal. Rabbit blinked his red eyes hard. I came specially to thank you for giving me, and the entire demon race, a new lease of life. If Great Immortal hadn't scared, oh no, taught them not to eat humans, they wouldn't have ascended to immortality so easily. Rabbit was the first demon immortal to ascend to immortality in the entire upper realm. You're very thoughtful. Lone Moon patted his shoulder. What a good rabbit. After so many years, it still remembered what happened back then. And the 10 Directions continent of the immortal realm was so big. It was not easy for it to find its way here. He is. Lone Moon looked up at the man beside Rabbit. He realized that he was only an earth immortal and a human cultivator. I'm Zwa Shuming. Greetings, immortal supremacies. That man was stunned. He bowed respectfully to the few of them. He's an earth immortal who just ascended. Rabbit scratched his head and said somewhat embarrassedly, Celestial Emperor Biao Ting has some immortal fate with him. I was ordered to bring him to the heavenly palace. I happened to receive a message from Little Red on the way. I knew that Great Immortal had returned and rushed over. That's why I brought him along. Lone Moon glanced at him, not paying much attention. Great Immortal. Rabbit looked at Shunning hesitantly. Why don't you join Invincible Sect too? Rabbit rubbed his hands and said anxiously. I've mentioned this to Little Red many times, but she said that she had to ask you first. I'm really useful. I can grow carrots. The 3 of them. That's really an amazing skill. No need. Lone Moon rejected directly. He was a demon immortal. Cultivating on the demon immortal continent was the most beneficial to him. You're doing well in Qingzhe continent. Why do you have to move here? What's more, raising a rabbit required money too, alright? Great Immortal is right. Rabbit's ears drooped instantly. He subconsciously muttered, There's still an immortal stone mine in my cave abode. It's really troublesome to move. Then you'd better move here. Move tomorrow. Lone Moon immediately changed his words. Huh. Rabbit. Shunning. I Ching. Why didn't you say you were a rabbit with immortal stones? 3. Chapter 627. Really? Rabbit was overjoyed. Even his ears straightened, his eyes shining as he looked at Lone Moon. Of course. Lone Moon nodded, smiling kindly as he patted his shoulder. We're considered old friends. There's no need to stand on ceremony. If you can't move it, I'll send a few more disciples to help you. All right, thank you, Great Immortal. No, Sect Master. Rabbit bowed excitedly. Then I'll go back and pack my things now. He turned and was about to leave. When he saw the person behind him, he paused, as if just remembering that he had a mission. But don't worry, I'll just inform little Biao. Lone Moon glanced at the Earth Immortal beside him and said, This, fellow Immortal Zwa, it's not convenient for Rabbit now. Why don't I send someone else to send you to Qingzhe Heavenly Palace? That Earth Immortal was easy to talk to. He hurriedly replied respectfully, Thank you, Supremacy. Lone Moon then turned to Yu Hong and instructed, Yu Hong, personally send fellow Immortal Zwa to little Biao to explain the situation. After you come back, send a few disciples to help Rabbit move. It's best if they're good at earth element sorcery. Yes, Elder. Yu Hong answered. With that said, Lone Moon raised his hand and set up a teleportation array that led straight to Little Biao's old nest. Almost instantly, a white circular array appeared beside him. Perhaps it was the first time he saw a teleportation array in the immortal realm. Zhuo Shuming looked at it curiously and thanked Lone Moon again. Thank you, Supremacy. Then he turned and walked towards the array excitedly, standing properly in the array. Yu Hong was just about to follow, when her expression suddenly changed. Her eyes widened as she looked at the person in the array, exclaiming, Elder Lone Moon. Lone Moon subconsciously turned back, only to realize that the enemy had suddenly changed. The array clearly had not been activated, but Zhuo Shuming's body seemed to be scattering fluorescent light. Spots of white light suddenly appeared. No, not his body, his entire body was glowing. The light dissipated very quickly, even his figure became fainter. Zhuo Shuming also looked confused, as if he did not know what was happening at all, his expression still full of curiosity. This is the teleportation of the immortal realm dash. Before he finished speaking, he was about to disappear completely. Chef! In a flash, I Ching appeared in the array. Just as he was about to reach out to grab Zhuo Shuming, he was a step too late. Zhuo Shuming had already disappeared completely, leaving behind an unactivated formation, as if it had never existed in the first place. Rabbit was also dumbfounded as he stared at the spot where the man had disappeared. What happened to fellow immortals? What kind of spell was that? Lone Moon and Chef's faces darkened. No, that wasn't a spell. They didn't sense any aura of a spell at all. That person just disappeared into thin air. Even Chef, who was the manager, could not stop him. I Ching conjured a seal with both hands and used his sorcery to track the other party's aura. A moment later he paused. He is no longer in the immortal realm. Rabbit was stunned. If he wasn't in the celestial realm, could he be in the mortal realm? But didn't he just ascend? Lone Moon and I Ching's faces darkened. Lone Moon turned to the two people behind him and said, Yu Hong, bring Rabbit down first and arrange for the disciples to help him move. I will explain to Little Biao about that earth immortal just now. Yes, Elder. Oh, all right. Although Rabbit was still full of questions, he obediently followed Yu Hong down. It was only after the two of them had left that Lone Moon and I Ching turned to look at the person at the table. Shening, what does the warning mean? Why was there someone that even Chef could not catch? As soon as he finished speaking, his eyes widened. That earth immortal just now couldn't be an invader, could he? It might have nothing to do with him. Shening shook her head. Then how did he suddenly disappear? Where did he go? I just tracked the data of the moment he disappeared. Shening glanced at the light screen and tapped on it. After looking at it carefully for a while, she said, Chef was right. He went back to the lower realm. Just that they did not know which small world it was. How is that possible? The two of them were shocked. I Ching stepped forward and said, Master, I did not sense the opening of the realm gate. How did the other party directly go down to the lower realm without going through the realm gate? It's not just back to the lower realm. Shening pointed at the data on the light screen and said, in that instant, all his data and attributes were reduced by more than 50%. Reduced data. Lone Moon paused and immediately reacted. You mean his cultivation has regressed? 50%. That meant that he had fallen from at least an earth immortal back to the nascent soul stage. Yes, and it's within the normal range of his vital signs. That meant that he was not injured. Although the heavenly Tao would suppress part of one's cultivation in the lower realm, that was only suppression, not a direct drop. Apart from serious injuries, under what circumstances could a person's cultivation fall by half? Wait, regressed. Lone Moon thought of something and turned to look at Shening. He rewound. There was such an example. Didn't Chef rewind to become immortal back then? You can say that. Shening thought about it and added, it's just that in that instant, there were other data anomalies. So he was not the only one who rewound. It could be everyone in the small world he was in. Lone Moon paused. What do you mean? That is. Shen Ying's eyes narrowed. That small world's time has been rewound. That was possible. Apart from the managers and the ancient gods of creation, nobody else could reverse time. Shorty was the only ancient god left here. She would not do something like this for no reason. That meant that the person who reversed time was intruder. Chef said directly. Lone Moon instantly thought of the hole that suddenly appeared on the river of forgetfulness. He could not help but curse. Shit, it was still the intruder's fault after all. Master, I did not sense the intruder's aura, I Ching said in a low voice. If there was a creature from another world, he should have been the first to discover it. An intruder who can reverse time naturally would not be easily detected by you, Lone Moon said. Lone Moon said, didn't that invading manager also occupy the entire small world before he was discovered? It's already growing mushrooms. I Ching's frown deepened. But if that's the case, where are we going to find that intruder? If they could not sense it, then they could not find it. Why don't we ask little Biao? Shening suggested. The two of them paused and reacted immediately. Holy shit, they almost forgot about it. Zhuo Shuming was summoned to the heavenly palace by little Biao. He must know which small world he came from. Lone Moon immediately took out a communication jade token and sent a bit of immortal chi into it. Instantly, the jade token flashed white, and a familiar figure floated out from it. Little Biao's voice sounded. Young Emperor Lone Moon, I wonder why you are looking for me. Exalted goddess. Before he could finish speaking, he saw Shening at the side. His entire body trembled. Hey little Biao. Shening greeted. Biao Ting's legs turned to jelly. His tall and imposing figure instantly became shorter. He knelt down with a thud. Little Biao is here. Lone Moon. I Ching. How big of a psychological trauma was this? Oh. Chapter 628. Little Biao, we have something to ask you, Shening said. Yes, exalted goddess, no problem, exalted goddess. Little Biao sat down obediently and nodded furiously. Lone Moon's mouth twitched. Did you ask Rabbit to bring an immortal called Zhuo Shuming back to the heavenly palace? Zhuo Shuming? Rabbit. Little Biao looked confused. Who? He's an earth immortal who just ascended, Lone Moon explained. Just ascended. Little Biao paused. Then realization dawned on him. Oh, you mean the person Yu Shui went to fetch? His surname is Zhua. I guess he's not a demon immortal? Why, you don't know him? Lone Moon looked at him strangely. I don't. Little Biao shook his head. This is the first time I've heard of this name. Then you and him. Little Biao did not know that earth immortal. Why did he bring him to the heavenly palace? By right. An earth immortal should not have the right to enter the celestial emperor's heavenly palace. It's a long story. Little Biao turned to look at Shening. Then he said obediently. Exalted goddess, do you remember the first time little bird and I met you? I don't. Shening replied instantly. Don't hit me like that. It hurts. Little Biao's mouth twitched. Then he smiled awkwardly. Exalted goddess, little bird and I had some misunderstandings about the divine weapon. We lost control and fought all the way to the lower realm. We met Exalted Goddess when we crossed the realm gate. It was Exalted Goddess who asked us to send Lady Xian Tong back to the sect. Do you remember? Oh, Shening nodded. She did not look like she remembered at all. And then, he obviously couldn't remember, right? That must be it, right? It was because of that battle that I realized I lost something when I returned to the immortal realm. Little Biao scratched his head in embarrassment. What did you lose? Lone Moon asked. It's a heart-protecting scale on my chest. Little Biao's eyes flashed. That scale has been imbued with my dermic powers for more than 10,000 years. It's considered a supreme-grade immortal weapon in the lower realm. A few days ago, I divined that this scale had been picked up by someone, and that person had already ascended to the upper realm. That's why I ordered Yu Shui to pick him up and take back that heart-protecting scale. It's just a piece of scale. Is there a need to go so far? Lone Moon frowned. Putting aside the fact that its beast body was already covered in scales, losing one or two pieces was not a big deal. Since it had already fallen off, was it really necessary to ask for it back? It's been thousands of years. Even if it's a heart-protecting scale, you should have grown it back by now, right? Yes, it has grown back. Little Biao's expression changed. He looked around nervously and hesitantly. Then, with an aggrieved expression, he said, But this is different. How is it different? You're not a dragon. How can you have a long reverse scale? Because. It became even more aggrieved. Perhaps it was because it was anxious. It gritted its teeth and instantly changed back to its original form. Immediately, a pitch-black miniature four-legged beast appeared on the screen. Little Biao raised his front paw and pointed at his chest pitifully. Because the new one is a different color. The few of them lowered their heads to look at his chest. Indeed, on his chest, there was indeed a different scale. The scale was in the shape of a heart, hanging in the middle. It was especially eye-catching. More importantly, it was actually pink. In the middle of a large patch of pure black scales, a pink heart-shaped scale suddenly appeared. From afar, it looked like a pink heart had been drawn on its chest. The originally mighty and domineering beast suddenly looked like a little girl. Pooh! The three of them could not help but burst out laughing. Exalted goddess! Little Biao looked like he was about to cry. Little Biao, wait a minute! Lone Moon raised his hand to stop Little Biao from speaking. Then, the three of them turned around and shrugged their shoulders. In less than a moment, 3 unbridled bursts of laughter resounded throughout the rear hall. Ha 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 ha. Asterisk 3. What kind of strange pink heart-shaped beast was this? They were dying of laughter. Did the immortals of Qingzhe continent know that their celestial emperor looked like this? Little Biao. You can't attack a beast like this. After all, he was a celestial emperor. Can't you give him some face? I feel so bad that I want to cry. The three of them laughed for more than 10 minutes. They bent over and laughed so hard that they looked like 3 cotton balls. Little Biao, you're a celestial emperor after all. Why don't you use sorcery to change your color? I did, but it didn't work. At most, it was just a smokescreen. When the time was up, he would change back. Then why don't you dye it? I can't. This is a heart-protecting scale. It doesn't stain. Pooh, ha 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 ha. No, he could not help but laugh. Little Biao felt bitter. After laughing for a long while, Lone Moon coughed a few times before he found his voice again. So you want your scale back because of this Pu, because of the color? Little Biao had already returned to his human form. He nodded vigorously and said, Yes. If not for his image as a celestial emperor, why would he suddenly summon an immortal who had just ascended to the heavenly palace? You don't know anything about this Shushuming? Little Biao nodded vigorously. I didn't expect him to be an immortal cultivator. I thought that the person who picked up my scale was a demon immortal. So that was the case. In other words, this Shushuming coincidentally obtained Little Biao's scale and brought it with him to the immortal realm. And Little Biao happened to want this scale back. That was why he summoned him to the heavenly palace. Then you should know which small world he came from. Lone Moon asked. I do. Little Biao nodded. He's in the Rainbow Light realm. Lone Moon turned to look at Chef. I Ching nodded. It seemed like he had found the place. He heaved a sigh of relief. Then, he explained to Little Biao about Rabbit moving, and the news that Shushuming might have come to the lower realm. He only skipped the part about turning back time. Little Biao's face was full of despair about the scale that fell into his hands back to the lower realm. He did not feel good at all. Exalted goddess. He raised his head weakly and looked at Shining. You asked about this person. Are you planning to come to the lower realm? Then can you? That's enough. Lone Moon instantly knew what he wanted to say. If we find your heart-protecting scale, we will bring it back for you. Yes, exalted goddess. Thank you, exalted goddess. Little Biao was overjoyed. He felt as if his broken heart had been repaired. Lone Moon then cut off the communication and kept the jade token. He turned to Chef and said, Since we've found the place, let's go to the lower realm. As long as they knew which small world it was, it should not be difficult to find Shushuming. Chef nodded. Then, he turned and raised his hand to open the realm gate of the Rainbow Light realm. Lone Moon sent a message to Yu Hong and instructed her. Then, the three of them crossed the realm gate together. Almost instantly, the scene in front of the three of them changed. They arrived at a flat land. This was a small world with exceptionally rich spirit chi. It was comparable to the three clear realms in Fatty's holy arrival realm. Chef sensed for a moment, and instantly found Zhuo Shuming's position. Although Shuning said that his data had been reduced by half, and the few of them were prepared for the fact that his cultivation level would drop, they did not expect it to be this low. Chapter 629. The corner of Longmun's mouth twitched. Was this lowering? Was this reheating? He glanced at the crowd in front of him, who was looking at Zhuo Shuming curiously and excitedly. His face was still the same, except that it was a little immature. But his cultivation was not at the nascent soul stage as they had guessed, but a chi refinement rookie. The place he was at looked like a disciple selection venue for an immortal sect, perhaps some powerful sect. When they found their way here, there were already many cultivators who had signed up. Most of them were at the 3rd or 4th level of chi refinement. Zhuo Shuming was one of them. His cultivation was slightly higher than the others, at the 7th level of chi refinement. But compared to his earth immortal cultivation, which he had just ascended an hour ago, it was like heaven and earth. Fellow Taoists, Longmun could not help but call out, looking at him with a complicated expression. Zhuo Shuming faltered, looking around before turning back. Fellow Taoist, know me? You don't remember me? Longmun frowned. It seemed like this time reversal was no different from rewinding. Even his memories had disappeared. Sorry. Zhuo Shuming thought that he had forgotten, instantly looking guilty. I really can't remember. Where did we meet? How should I address you, fellow Taoist? My Tao name is Longmun. Longmun's eyes narrowed. His tone changed instantly, and an excuse came out of his mouth. It's not a big deal. We met once a few years ago. You didn't bring any spirit stones then. You even borrowed 2 spirit stones from me for the teleportation fee. Have you forgotten? I Ching. Shining. What kind of lousy scam excuse was this? Who would believe it? I see. Zhuo Shuming looked enlightened. I'm sorry. I actually forgot such an important matter. Luckily we are fated to meet again. With that said, he hurriedly took out 4 spirit stones and handed them over. I'll return the spirit stones to you now. Thank you for your help back then, fellow Taoist. Master and disciple. He really believed it. Wasn't this person too gullible? Don't stand on ceremony, fellow Taoist. It's fate that we met. Longmun smiled and accepted the spirit stones generously. The master and disciple. He actually accepted it shamelessly. As expected of someone with the surname Niu, his skin was really thick. Fellow Taoist Longmun, are you also here to participate in the Tai Yin sect's disciple selection? Zhuo Shuming asked casually. Fellow Taoists will wishes to join Tai Yin sect. Longmun glanced at the people around him. I wonder what's so special about Tai Yin sect. Fellow Taoists must be joking. Zhuo Shuming said sincerely. Who doesn't know that Tai Yin sect is the #1 sect in the world? Everyone wants to join it. However, the Tai Yin sect is very strict when it comes to accepting disciples. I've worked hard for a long time, and only dared to come here after I reached the 7th layer of Qi disciple. I see. Longmun nodded. Oh yes, I still don't know fellow Taoist Longmun's cultivation level. He could not tell Longmun's cultivation level, so it must be higher than his. Foundation establishment, Longmun said casually. Foundation establishment. He was startled. Fellow Taoist, you're already a foundation establishment cultivator. Then, why are you here for the selection? He hurriedly pointed to a courtyard not far away and said anxiously. Fellow Taoist, you must have come to the wrong place. That's where the foundation establishment cultivators are selected. Tai Yin sect has always valued cultivation. Since you're already a foundation establishment cultivator, you'll definitely be able to join. Longmun glanced at the courtyard and cupped his fists. Thank you for the reminder, fellow Taoists. Fellow Taoist, you're too kind. Zhuo Shuming smiled kindly. Who knows, we might even be fellow disciples in the future. Then I wish you success, fellow Taoist. Longmun replied politely. He did not stay for long. After exchanging a few more pleasantries, he took the 4 spirit stones he got for free, and left with Chef and Shining. It was only when they reached the end of the street that Longmun asked, How is Chef? Does that Zhuo Shuming have the aura of an invader? No. I Ching shook his head. I've just checked his body and soul. There's nothing out of the ordinary. Lo Mun's frown deepened. Could it be that this Zhuo Shuming really had nothing to do with the invaders? Was he just an unlucky fellow who was dragged back to the mortal realm because of time reversal? Where's little Biao's scale? Shenning suddenly asked. The two of them faltered. I Ching then thought of this and replied. Nothing. There's no trace of immortal qi on him. The scale is not on him. Which means to say, he probably hasn't encountered that opportunity. Lo Mun's expression darkened. He seemed to have thought of something. His brows furrowed again. Master, what should we do now? I Ching asked. Shenning tilted her head and thought for a moment. A moment later she replied. Wait. Wait. Wait for what? The two of them exchanged a look. A moment later, Lo Mun's eyes brightened. You mean wait for the invader to appear on his own? Is he that dumb? Shenning habitually took out a fruit and took a bite. There must be a reason why the invader spent so much effort to reverse time. Master, are you saying that he might be planning to change something? I Ching reacted. Shenning nodded. He only reversed time in one small world. That proves that he doesn't have the ability to affect the entire plane. And that's Zhuo 2 bucks. It's Zhuo Shuming. The corner of Lo Mun's mouth twitched. Where did Zhuo 2 bucks get this nickname from? 2 bucks spirit stones? Yes, he's already from the immortal realm. Shenning continued. By right, the matters in the small world shouldn't affect him. He shouldn't have come to the lower realm either. But the invader purposely dragged him down to reverse time. Why do you think that is? The invader's goal might be related to Zhuo Shuming. I Ching exclaimed. If that's the case, he'll definitely appear by his side. Then we just have to follow Zhuo Shuming and we'll find the invader. Lo Mun also reacted. Holy shit, this logic was so lame. Indeed, the cheats didn't need to use their brains. Then now I Ching turned to look at Shenning. Of course we join Tai Yin's sect first. It'll be easier for us to keep an eye on him. Lo Mun made the final decision. Let's go. Let's register. With that, he led the two of them into the courtyard, where Zhuo Shuming mentioned the registration for Foundation Establishment disciples. He adjusted his cultivation level to the Foundation Establishment stage. Compared to the sea of people outside, the courtyard was much quieter. There were only a few people inside. Zhuo Shuming was right. Everyone here was at the Foundation Establishment stage. Two disciples dressed in blue uniforms were at the front of the registration. They were probably from Tai Yin's sect. Both of them were qi refinement cultivators. They were very enthusiastic towards the people who came to register. They specially invited them to sit down. Then, they quickly went forward to register their names and other information. Then he tested his cultivation and spells, passed through a few simple formations, and tested his spiritual root and so on. Lo Mun and Chef were high-level cultivators to begin with. These tests were nothing to them. As for Shenning, the two disciples didn't even see her. These tests were indeed easy for Foundation Establishment cultivators. Not just them. Everyone else in the courtyard passed without any pressure. By the time they were done, the selection of qi refinement disciples had also come to an end. There were less than half of the cultivators in the courtyard. And Zhuo Shuming, who was at the 7th stage of qi refinement, also failed. Lo Mun, I Ching, Shenning. Shit. Chapter 630. Congratulations, fellow Taoist Lo Mun. You have successfully joined the Tai Yin sect. Zhuo Shuming smiled sincerely and said with some envy, I knew that fellow Taoist would definitely be able to get what you want. What the hell? You've already been killed. So what's the point of them joining the Tai Yin sect? In any case, you're someone who has ascended before. Aren't you embarrassed to be so weak? The corner of Lo Mun's mouth twitched several times. He took a deep breath to suppress the curses in his heart. Fellow Taoist Zhuo, what are your plans for the future? Zhuo Shuming scratched his head in embarrassment. To tell you the truth, I heard that Gui sect will be accepting disciples in Pinghua City in 3 days. Although Gui sect's reputation is not as good as Tai Yin sect, It's still one of the 6 famous sections. That's why I wanted to try my luck there. Why didn't you say so earlier if there was a backup plan? Oh, is Guei sect that good? Lone Moon asked. Of course. Zhuo Shuming's eyes brightened. Although Guei sect doesn't have as many disciples as Taiyin sect, most of them are pill cultivators. There's even a 9th stage pill refiner in the sect. Among the 6 famous sects, Guei sect is famous. 9th level alchemist? Lone Moon thought for a moment. Could he have been an alchemist in the past? That's right. The more he spoke, the more excited he became. The only level 9 alchemist in the entire Rainbow Light realm is in Guei sect. The other sects have to seek help from Guei sect if they want to refine high-grade elixirs of 9th grade and above. If that's the case, Guei sect is indeed a good choice. Of course, and their requirements for disciples are different from the Taiyin sect. They don't care about spirit roots. Disciples with different spirit roots can join as long as they pass the entrance test. That good? We'll go with you then. Then when? Ah, ha. Zhuo Shuming was stunned, his eyes widening in disbelief as he stared at him. It's decided. How do I get to Pinghua City? No, fellow Taoist. Haven't you already joined the Taiyin sect? It's our first time out, so we don't know the way. How about we go together? But you can, but there's no time to lose. Why don't we set off now? Oh right, I forgot to introduce you. He pointed to the 2 people beside him and said, These 2 are my companions. This is Yi Qing, a sword cultivator. As for the other one, it's not important. Zhuo Shuming. Shening. Motherf asterisk her. Zhuo Shuming was a little confused. Even he did not understand why the 3 of them, who had clearly passed Taiyin sect's selection and had a bright future ahead of them, would mysteriously decide to follow him to Guei sect after a short conversation. He thought back to their conversation and reflected on what he had said that had caused them to change their minds and choose Guei sect over Taiyin sect. But no matter how he explained, the few of them seemed determined to join Guei sect. By the time they reacted, they were already on the way to Pinghua City. Zhuo Shuming did not feel good at all. He looked at the 3 of them with guilt in his eyes, and looked like he wanted to commit suicide to atone for his sins. He didn't expect that a few casual words from him would have such an effect. Fellow Taoists, where do we go next? Lone Moon pointed at the intersection in front of them. Zhuo Shuming looked at the 3 of them speechless. After a while, he pointed to the left and said, Pinghua City is in the west. He then tried to persuade them for the umpteenth time. Fellow Taoist Lone Moon, do you really want to follow me to Guei sect? It's not too late to join Taiyin sect now. Don't do anything stupid. Then which sect do you want to join? Of course I have to go to Guei sect. He had already been rejected here. That's settled then. Let's go. Lone Moon headed to the left. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? This is an important matter for cultivation. Do you have to be so casual? Zhuo Shuming looked like he was about to break down. Seeing that the 3 of them had no intention of changing their minds, he could only sigh and follow them. He could only sigh and follow them. His whole person was like a frosted eggplant. As soon as he thought about how his 3 fellow Taoists might have their bright futures ruined because of a few words from him, he was almost drowning in guilt. Yet they acted as if nothing had happened. They followed him all the way to Guei sect. No matter how he tried to persuade them, they wouldn't listen. What's more, in order to match his cultivation level, they didn't choose to use sword kinesis. Instead, they followed him to the transportation array in the neighboring city. At that moment, he felt like a huge mountain of responsibility was pressing down on his head. He gritted his teeth. Forget it. If they really became fellow sect members in the future, he would protect them even if it cost him his life. They didn't put their trust in him in vain. Thus, Zhuo Shuming made a vow in his heart to protect the big boss. After the 4 of them left the city, they headed west. Because Zhuo Shuming was still a qi refinement cultivator, he wasn't familiar with sword kinesis. That was why they had to walk. But after walking for 6 to 8 hours, they still didn't see any sign of the neighboring city. We're not there yet. Shening calculated the time. It was almost dinner time. Can we rest now? I'm so tired. Tired my ass. Lone Moon stopped in his tracks. He turned back and rolled his eyes at a certain lazy person. Get off Chef's back before you say that. They hadn't walked a single step since they left the city. They were all carried by others. How could they have the cheek to say they were tired? Fellow Taoists. Zhuo Shuming paused and looked at the sky. Miss Shen is right. It's getting late. There's a village in front. Why don't we rest for the night and continue our journey tomorrow? Lone Moon turned to look. Indeed, they could see a village in front of them. There was even a large field of spirit rice at the entrance of the village. Lone Moon nodded. The people in this village were probably cultivators too. It's just that they didn't have much potential. Their cultivation level wasn't high. That was why they could only grow some spirit herbs and spirit rice to survive. Villages like this were usually very friendly to cultivators like them who passed by. There were even courtyards in the village for people to rest in. Of course, they had to pay spirit stones. The few of them then walked towards the village. When they entered, they realized that the village seemed to have suffered some kind of natural disaster. There were cracks all over the ground. Half of the houses had collapsed. Most of the villagers were using sorcery to rebuild. Even the mountain at the side had collapsed. Soil rolled into the village and buried a large field of spirit rice. Was this an earthquake? Zhuo Shuming was shocked. He went in to ask. Indeed, there was an earthquake. Fortunately, the villagers were all cultivators. No one was injured. They directly rented a small courtyard at the entrance of the village. They planned to stay here for the night. Zhuo Shuming did not enter the house. Fellow Taoists, have a good rest. I have a few old acquaintances in this village. I want to visit them. He instructed them. With that, he directly entered the village. He seemed anxious to know about his friend's situation. However, he left for 4 hours. When they finished dinner, they didn't see him return. Chapter 631. Congratulations, fellow Taoist Lone Moon. You have successfully joined the Taiyin sect. Zhuo Shuming smiled sincerely and said with some envy, I knew that fellow Taoist would definitely be able to get what you want. What the hell? You've already been killed. So what's the point of them joining the Taiyin sect? In any case, you're someone who has ascended before. Aren't you embarrassed to be so weak? The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched several times. He took a deep breath to suppress the curses in his heart. Fellow Taoists, what are your plans for the future? Zhuo Shuming scratched his head in embarrassment. To tell you the truth, I heard that Guiyi sect will be accepting disciples in Pinghua City in 3 days. Although Guiyi sect's reputation is not as good as Taiyin sect, it's still one of the 6 famous sections. That's why I wanted to try my luck there. Why didn't you say so earlier if there was a backup plan? Oh, is Guiyi sect that good? Lone Moon asked. Of course. Zhuo Shuming's eyes brightened. Although Guiyi sect doesn't have as many disciples as Taiyin sect, most of them are pill cultivators. There's even a 9th stage pill refiner in the sect. Among the 6 famous sects, Guiyi sect is famous. 9th level alchemist? Lone Moon thought for a moment. Could he have been an alchemist in the past? That's right. The more he spoke, the more excited he became. The only level 9 alchemist in the entire Rainbow Light realm is in Guiyi sect. The other sects have to seek help from Guiyi sect if they want to refine high-grade elixirs of 9th grade and above. If that's the case, Guiyi sect is indeed a good choice. Of course, and their requirements for disciples are different from the Taiyin sect. They don't care about spirit roots. Disciples with different spirit roots can join as long as they pass the entrance test. That good? We'll go with you then. Then when? Zhuo Shuming was stunned, his eyes widening in disbelief as he stared at him. It's decided. How do I get to Pinghua City? No, fellow Taoist. Haven't you already joined the Taiyin sect? It's our first time out, so we don't know the way. How about we go together? But you can, there's no time to lose. Why don't we set off now? Oh right, I forgot to introduce you. He pointed to the 2 people beside him and said, These 2 are my companions. This is I Ching, a sword cultivator. As for the other one, it's not important. Zhuo Shuming. Shining. Mother Zhuo Shuming was a little confused. Even he did not understand why the three of them, who had clearly passed Tai Yin sect's selection and had a bright future ahead of them, would mysteriously decide to follow him to Guiyi sect after a short conversation. He thought back to their conversation and reflected on what he had said that had caused them to change their minds and choose Guiyi sect over Tai Yin sect. But no matter how he explained, the few of them seemed determined to join Guiyi sect. By the time they reacted, they were already on the way to Pinghua City. Zhuo Shuming did not feel good at all. He looked at the three of them with guilt in his eyes, and looked like he wanted to commit suicide to atone for his sins. He didn't expect that a few casual words from him would have such an effect. Fellow Taoists, where do we go next? Lone Moon pointed at the intersection in front of them. Zhuo Shuming looked at the three of them speechless. After a while he pointed to the left and said, Pinghua City is in the west. He then tried to persuade them for the umpteenth time. Fellow Taoist Lone Moon, do you really want to follow me to Guiyi sect? It's not too late to join Tai Yin sect now. Don't do anything stupid. Then which sect do you want to join? Of course I have to go to Guiyi sect. He had already been rejected here. That's settled then. Let's go. Lone Moon headed to the left. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? This is an important matter for cultivation. Do you have to be so casual? Zhuo Shuming looked like he was about to break down. Seeing that the three of them had no intention of changing their minds, he could only sigh and follow them. He could only sigh and follow them. His whole person was like a frosted eggplant. As soon as he thought about how his three fellow Taoists might have their bright futures ruined because of a few words from him, he was almost drowning in guilt. Yet they acted as if nothing had happened. They followed him all the way to Guiyi sect. No matter how he tried to persuade them, they wouldn't listen. What's more, in order to match his cultivation level, they didn't choose to use sword kinesis. Instead, they followed him to the transportation array in the neighboring city. At that moment, he felt like a huge mountain of responsibility was pressing down on his head. He gritted his teeth. Forget it. If they really became fellow sect members in the future, he would protect them even if it cost him his life. They didn't put their trust in him in vain. Thus, Zhuo Shuming made a vow in his heart to protect the big boss. After the four of them left the city, they headed west. Because Zhuo Shuming was still a qi refinement cultivator, he wasn't familiar with sword kinesis. That was why they had to walk. But after walking for 6 to 8 hours, they still didn't see any sign of the neighboring city. We're not there yet. Shening calculated the time. It was almost dinner time. Can we rest now? I'm so tired. Tired my ass. Lone Moon stopped in his tracks. He turned back and rolled his eyes at a certain lazy person. Get off Chef's back before you say that. They hadn't walked a single step since they left the city. They were all carried by others. How dare they say they were tired? Fellow Taoists. Zhuo Shuming paused. He looked at the sky and said, Miss Shun is right. It's getting late. There's a village in front. Why don't we rest for the night and continue our journey tomorrow? Lone Moon turned to look. Indeed, they could see a village in front of them. At one glance, there was a large field of spirit rice at the entrance of the village. Lone Moon nodded. The people in this village were probably cultivators too. It's just that they didn't have good qualifications. Their cultivation level wasn't high. That was why they could only grow some spirit herbs and spirit rice to survive. Villages like this were usually very friendly to cultivators like them who passed by. There were even courtyards in the village for people to rest in. Of course, they had to pay spirit stones. The few of them then walked towards the village. When they entered, they realized that the village seemed to have suffered some kind of natural disaster. There were cracks all over the ground. Half of the houses had collapsed. Most of the villagers were using sorcery to rebuild. Even the mountain at the side had collapsed. Soil rolled into the village and buried a large field of spirit rice. Was this an earthquake? Zhuo Shuming was shocked. He went in to ask. Indeed, there was an earthquake. Fortunately, the villagers were all cultivators. No one was injured. They directly rented a small courtyard at the entrance of the village. They planned to stay here for the night. Zhou Shuming did not enter the house. Fellow Taoists, rest well. I have a few old acquaintances in this village. I want to visit them. He instructed them. With that, he directly entered the village. He seemed anxious to know about his friend's situation. However, he left for 4 hours. By the time they finished dinner, they didn't see him return. Chapter 632. Guiyi sect was not far. The spirit boat flew for less than an hour. They saw a large number of green floating peaks in front of them. The spirit boat flew straight towards the highest peak in the middle and stopped on the square in front of the hall. The many new disciples on the boat were stirred. They all walked to the side to look. Even Zhou Shuming could not help but look out curiously. There were already 4 to 5 disciples standing in front of the hall. There were men and women dressed in the same green robes. Their cultivation levels were all at the foundation establishment stage. They all looked up at the slowly descending spirit boat. After the spirit boat stopped, they called for everyone to disembark. Lone Moon and the others were about to disembark when they suddenly felt a gaze directed towards them. There was a faint murderous intent. Lone Moon's heart sank. He subconsciously took a step to the side, avoiding that gaze. He turned and saw that the gaze came from the girl on the far right of the disciple below. There was still some floating spirit chi around her. It seemed like she had just reached the foundation establishment stage. But Lone Moon could see that she was actually in the late stages of foundation establishment. He just did not know what method she used to hide her cultivation. Looking closely, he realized that her gaze did not fall on them, but on Zhou Shuming in front. There was some probing and evaluation in her gaze, as if she was looking at a commodity waiting to be evaluated. But the murderous intent from before had disappeared. Father Neo. I Ching obviously also noticed this person. He directly said in a low voice, "She is that person in the dense forest." Lone Moon was shocked. "Are you sure? This clearly looked like an ordinary cultivator." "Yes." I Ching nodded. "She saw us in the dense forest." Lone Moon reacted. "To avoid alerting the enemy, we hid." With that said, he directly pulled the 2 out of the crowd, raised his hand and set up a concealment array around them. The 3 figures instantly disappeared from the spirit boat. Everyone was in a hurry to disembark, so no one noticed that they disappeared. Fellow Taoist Lone Moon, let's disembark too. Where are they? Zhou Shuming turned and was just about to call them to disembark together, but found that there was no one behind him. The 3 people who were just behind him had disappeared. He looked anxious, subconsciously looking for them. "Hey, what are you waiting for? We have arrived at the sect, quickly disembark." The disciple controlling the spirit boat saw that he did not disembark and urged. "No, senior brother, I came with 3 friends. There's no one left on the ship," the disciple replied. "I think they've already gone down." Zhou Shuming then got off the boat with a confused look on his face. He kept searching in the crowd, but could not find anyone, and the woman below kept looking in Zhou Shuming's direction. "Chef, is this really the intruder from that day?" The invisible Lone Moon scrutinized the woman on the right. "She doesn't look any different." "I don't know either." I Ching's frown deepened. It wasn't just different. As a manager, he could even sense that the soul in the other party's body originated from the source of this world. There was nothing out of place at all. But this was indeed the intruder who had escaped that night. "Master, look." The 2 of them turned to look at Shening. "Let's compare the data." She immediately clicked on a light screen, and a series of data flashed across it. In less than a moment, it had already stopped. Shening tilted her head. What is it?" Lone Moon asked. "Did you find out? She is indeed from this plane. But there's something else mixed in her body." "Something else? What did she mean?" I Ching faltered. As if recalling something, he directly activated some of his source power and looked again. Instantly his eyes widened. "Her soul. What is it? What did you see?" Lone Moon asked. I Ching glanced at him and activated a sliver of his source power to sweep it in front of his eyes. Holy shit! He almost cried out in shock. The source power allowed them to directly see through the physical body and see the other party's soul. He saw that in the middle of the woman's originally transparent soul body, there was suddenly a layer of black. Her entire soul body looked like expired bread that was starting to mold from the middle. It was extremely strange. Possession. Lone Moon instantly thought of this possibility. A moment later, he directly denied it. No, this isn't possession. That layer of black soul body was especially closely mixed with the original soul. Although it looked disgusting, it was a complete body. It couldn't be possession, but more like a combination. Wait a minute. Combination? Could it be that the real invader is the layer of soul in the middle? It is residing in the other party's body and has merged with the soul of this world? Instantly, he felt like he was talking about mushroom whose soul had been extracted. Shining nodded. Holy shit. Why did invaders like to do things like snatching other people's bodies? What do we do now? Chef, can you separate them? Just like when he saved Mushroom, he directly tore them apart. No. I Ching shook his head. The invader has already merged with the main soul. If we forcibly separate them, the original soul will also dissipate. Main soul. Lone Moon's eyes widened in shock. How is that possible? How can the main soul merge with someone else, unless the other party is willing? He stopped mid-sentence. Holy shit, no way. That soul was willing to be swallowed by the invader? I Ching's expression darkened. Before he could think carefully, the disciple in front of him had already led everyone into the hall. That invader walked right at the front, but at the moment he turned, his gaze still seemed to sweep in Zhuosheng's direction. Lone Moon and the others who had already concealed their figures and auras also followed behind him and walked in. The hall was already filled with people. Most of them were nascent soul cultivators. It seemed like they were the leaders of Guiyi sect. The two people with the highest cultivation were at the soul formation stage. There was a hint of elixir aura on them. They should be core cultivators. After that invader let everyone into the hall, he walked directly towards a nascent soul cultivator on the right. He called out sweetly, "Daddy," and then stood obediently behind him. There are quite a number of disciples joining Guiyi sect this time. The one sitting in the middle was probably the sect master of Guiyi sect. He glanced at the hundreds of new disciples in the hall, then smiled at everyone in the hall and said, "Elders, do you have anyone you like to take in as a disciple?" The nascent soul cultivators in the hall then stood up one by one and started to choose disciples. Almost everyone picked a few people, although they were all disciples of Guiyi sect. To be able to be under the tutelage of a nascent soul cultivator and have a master to guide them, it was naturally much better than ordinary disciples cultivating on their own. So the people who were chosen were naturally pleasantly surprised. After bowing, they stood behind the nascent soul cultivators. In less than an hour, the number of disciples in the hall was reduced by a quarter. Lone Moon looked carefully and realized that the invader's gaze had been fixed on Zhuosheng from the start. His gaze was full of probing. It seemed like their previous guess was right. This invader's motive was related to Zhuosheng, but for some reason, the other party did not make a move. It was as if he was waiting for something. Zhuosheng, however, did not notice anything. He took the time to look at the people around him from time to time, looking anxious to find someone. Until everyone had chosen, that invader did not make a sound. "Elders, since you have already chosen, let's end here for today." The Guiyi sect master in the middle stood up and looked at the remaining disciples. "The remaining people are the outer sect disciples of our sect. You may leave." The sect master was about to wave his hand when the soul formation cultivator on the left suddenly spoke. "Wait." Chapter 633. Uncle Master Tiani? The sect master faltered, turning around respectfully and cupping his fists. "My Danxia mountain is lacking a disciple to look after the spirit herbs. Let's pick one." That soul formation cultivator said casually, his gaze sweeping across the new disciples in the hall, finally landing on Zhuosheng, who was at the 7th level of Qi refinement, pointing. Him. All the disciples faltered, looking at Zhuosheng enviously. Although he was only looking after the spirit herbs, and not an official disciple, he was the soul formation supremacy, with the highest cultivation in Guiyi sect. Just a single word of guidance was already extremely beneficial to him. Lone Moon couldn't help but take a look at Swish. He was just about to sigh. Although this kid was naive and sweet, his luck was indeed not bad, as expected of someone who could ascend. In the next moment, a strange electronic voice suddenly sounded. Ding! Mission! Destroy the male lead's opportunity to enter Danxia Mountain. Stop the male lead from ascending. Help the host's wish to avenge. Go host. Quickly transmigrate. System 001 has high hopes for you. Don't worry 001. I've already transmigrated to so many worlds I know. A scumbag like Swish. Even if there is no mission, I will also avenge the host. Shining. I Ching. Lone Moon. What the hell was this sudden sound? Did they forget about Guangong's broadcast? Instantly, he somewhat understood how Shining felt when she met Feng Ying. This broadcast was really F***ing loud, but it seemed like other than the three of them, no one else could hear it at all. Grandmaster Tianyi, is there anything special about this disciple? That invader suddenly spoke, looking up at the Soul Formation Core cultivator with a naive expression. To actually make you personally ask to bring him to Danxia Mountain. Little E, don't be rude in front of Uncle Master. The moment she spoke, the nascent soul cultivator beside her immediately chided. It's all right. That Soul Formation Core cultivator called Tianyi glanced at her, not angry. Instead he spoke in a good mood. It's not that there's anything special about this disciple. It's just that I need a disciple to look after the spirit herbs. There's no requirement for cultivation. Anyone is fine. He's the highest cultivation among this group of Qi refinement disciples, so I chose him. Grandmaster, what you're saying is wrong. The invader blinked and pouted, acting even more innocent. You are a soul formation supremacy of our Gui sect. Which of the senior brothers on Danxia Mountain wasn't an outstanding talent? Even if it was just a guardian spirit herb, it was still a great opportunity for the disciples of the sect. I feel that Grandmaster should also choose someone with good aptitude. Only in this way will the reputation of Danxia Mount not be tarnished. The Soul Formation Core cultivator's smile became even more amiable. He looked at the girl with a doting gaze. Then in Little Ear's opinion, what kind of person should I choose? I think he's not bad. She pointed to a disciple besides Washuming and said, I've just seen the name list. He has dual spirit roots of water and wood. He's most suitable to look after spirit herbs. Tianyi glanced at the disciple and did not pay much attention. He nodded and said, all right, let's change it to him then. The disciple was overjoyed. He quickly walked out and cupped his fists. Thank you, Venerable One. Supremacy. Tianyi nodded. A hint of smugness flashed across the invader's eyes. For a moment, the other disciples in the hall looked at Swishuming with sympathy, yet his expression was as usual. He did not feel dejected from losing a great opportunity. His gaze still swept across the crowd from time to time, as if searching for something. Seeing that there were not many mistakes, the sect master then instructed the disciples to bring everyone to the outer sect. The remaining people then walked out with a look of disappointment. They all looked very downcast as they followed behind the senior brother, who led the team listlessly. Except for Zwishuming. He seemed to be anxious. He had not gone far when he could not help but pull the person beside him and start asking questions. Fellow Taoist, have you seen my companions? They boarded the ship with me. Where are the other three? No. Senior brother, have you seen my friends? There are three. One is called Lone Moon, another is called I Ching, and there's a lady with the surname Shin. Never heard of them. Big brother, my three friends are missing. They boarded the ship with me just now. They are Foundation Establishment cultivators. Have you seen them? Nope. This, the more Zwishuming asked, the more anxious he became. Even the disciple leading the way sensed it and walked back. What's the commotion behind? Seeing that it was Zwishuming, a trace of sympathy flashed across his eyes. What happened? Senior brother. Zwishuming hurried forward, looking even more anxious. My friends are missing. They passed the test with me. That's impossible. When we disembarked just now, we counted the number of people. That person frowned and asked for their names. He took out the name list and flipped it to the end. After a while, he looked up and glanced at him. His gaze was even more sympathetic. The 3 people you mentioned are not on the name list. How is that possible? Zhou Shuming was completely stunned. They had clearly chatted on the ship just now. All right. Let's continue. That disciple looked at him sympathetically again. Could it be that he was so upset that he went crazy because he did not enter Danxia Mountain? He sighed and turned to continue leading the way. Sigh. How pitiful. Zhou Shuming then followed with a dazed expression. Shening, who had been following behind. Lone Moon, who had casually erased the name list. I Ching, who had been maintaining the array throughout. Air. It seemed like he had accidentally caused trouble for his teammate. Master. I Ching could not help but ask worriedly. Do we need to erase his memory? Shening thought about it. Before she could answer, Lone Moon beside her replied first. Forget it. That invader's target is him. If we act rashly, she might find out. Let's think of another way. I Ching nodded. Lone Moon thought of the special voice he had heard just now. He turned to look at Shening. Shening, do you know what that system is? From what the 2 voices said just now, this did not seem to be the first world they had invaded. There's also a mission to help the host fulfill her wish. The so-called host can't be the original soul of that body, right? This could be the reason why the primary soul merged with the invader. The invader was helping the host to fulfill her wish. That was why the primary soul would automatically merge with her. That was why they did not see through the identity of the invader at the start. This system of hers won't be the same as Feng Ying's, will it? More or less. Shening tilted her head. The so-called systems are all high-level planes. They are products of technology with self-awareness. It's just that. I have never seen a system that can automatically shuttle between planes. Feng Ying's parenting system only fell into this plane because of a space-time storm. This was obviously not it. Then what do we do now? I have to ask Big Sister. Shening thought about it. She should have information about this. Chapter 634. A system that can traverse planes? Shen Jing's eyes darkened. She thought about it for a while before answering. I have indeed seen a system with such a function. But it's a bit of an exaggeration to say that they traverse planes. At most, they only project a portion of the soul over. Project. Lone Moon faltered. What do you mean? They actually do not have the ability to forcibly traverse planes. Shen Jing said in a low voice. So they will find some consciousness in the chaos that has not been completely swallowed to reside. Then from the chaos, they will sense the plane's original source that is similar to the host. They will capture a portion of the consciousness and project it into the plane to steal other plane's original source. Their goal is the plane's original source? You can say that. Shen Jing continued. But their power is too weak. The amount of original source that they can steal is very limited. It's not even the amount of a complete soul. And because it is an illegal invasion, this thing is very easy to be discovered by the rules. So it is very difficult to take away that tiny bit of original source, unless the soul is willing, Lone Moon blurted out. It wants to take away the main soul of the person who has possessed it. Which means that there are actually 3 parts in that body now. One is the original soul of that body, one is the invading system, and the last is the remnant consciousness that the system captured from the chaos to fuse with the main soul? That's right. Shen Jing nodded. This thing is like a parasite of the plane. Although it's only projecting a part of the foreign consciousness into the plane, the illegal invasion will still cause a certain amount of chaos in the plane, leaving a gap for the invasion. So the places they invade are all very hidden. It's the river of forgetfulness. I Ching suddenly remembered the hole that suddenly appeared in the river of forgetfulness. They invaded from the original source of the river of forgetfulness. That's right, Shen Jing said. There are many souls in the original source. It's very difficult to detect one more or one less. What's more, it was only a similar portion of the foreign consciousness that entered. Lone Moon and I Ching's faces both darkened. Indeed, if Roasted Chicken Gal had not suddenly fallen in, and Little Shorty had not happened to be at Invincible sect. Such a small hole, even they did not sense it. It was indeed very difficult to detect. And the reason that the system could secretly go back in time in the small world was also because of the impact when it broke through the plane. If Rabbit had not coincidentally gone to fetch Zwishuming, they would not have noticed what happened in the lower realm. Then how do we solve it? Shenning suddenly asked. Of course, before it fuses with the souls of this plane, we'll just crush it to death, Shinjing said matter-of-factly. If we don't smack this parasite to death, are we going to keep it alive for the new year? The three of them. Seems like it's too late. Don't tell me you've already fused with it and parasitized living beings? A look of surprise flashed across Shinjing's face. Sister Jing, we were just a little late. The corner of Lomun's mouth twitched, and he smiled awkwardly. Is there any other way? The disdain on Shinjing's face deepened. She snorted coldly and said, You call yourselves managers? Is the world's consciousness blind? The three of them. Please don't stab me in the back. Not everyone is a cheat. There's no other way. She gave each of them a look that said you're done for, and continued. Either you destroy the soul together with the parasite and the foreign consciousness. Either you wait for the host to completely gain the recognition of the host's soul, then leave the host's body, and escape with the host's main soul to the next plane. Leave the host's body? Shenning suddenly raised her head, and looked at the light screen in front of her. Sister, you mean to say that the host will separate itself from the host's soul when it escapes this plane? Shinjing turned back to look at her. The disdain in her eyes faded a little. That's right. But since it has already decided to leave, it must be fully prepared. You only have that moment to grab it. Lone Moon and I Ching's faces lit up, and they heaved a sigh of relief at the same time. It was good that they could leave. Actually, the troublesome thing was that system. They had too little information about it, and they had no idea what tricks it had up its sleeves. As for the foreign consciousness that fused with the main soul, there would always be a way to separate it again. Thank you, Sister Jing. The three of them thanked her, and after being lectured by Shin Jing a few more times, they hung up. Master, what should we do now? I Ching turned to look at Shining. Wait for the invader to leave this plane on its own? Shining nodded and said, We can speed it up a little. What do you mean? Lone Moon interrupted. How to speed it up? Doesn't that system have a mission? She habitually took out a fruit and reminded them. The two of them faltered for a moment, and recalled the system's public broadcast. It seemed to have given the consciousness it brought a mission to find Zwishuming for revenge. Wasn't this mission issued by the invader to get the original owner's consent, so that it would be easier to extract the main soul? It was an illegal invasion. Only the main soul could be taken away if it was willing. This mission was a transaction. He thought of something and frowned again. Don't tell me you want to help the invader to deal with $2 SWA, and then let it leave as soon as possible, so that you can catch it? I Ching subconsciously frowned. He was obviously unwilling to do so as well. Putting aside the fact that Zwishuming was not a bad person, from their standpoint, they did not want to turn around and push the invader. Shenning took a bite of the fruit, and looked up at the two of them before asking, Why should we help it? Can't we just destroy it? Nonsense. Lone Moon retorted subconsciously. If it does not fulfill the original owner's wish, the main soul will definitely not be willing to leave with it. The invader will naturally not leave. He suddenly stopped mid-sentence, as if thinking of something. His eyes widened abruptly. You mean to stop its mission, and let them fight amongst themselves? The more the main soul cannot get what it wants, the more it will not be willing to leave with the invader. I Ching also reacted. By then, the main soul will naturally automatically resist the foreign consciousness and the system. Perhaps we don't need to do anything, and they can separate. That's not for sure. Lone Moon shook his head and said in a low voice, That system can find such a loophole to come and proves that it knows very well that it cannot stay in the plane for too long, in order to avoid being detected by the rules and managers. So if it finds out that it cannot get the main soul's approval no matter what, it will choose to leave the plane prematurely. I Ching's expression was delighted. Lone Moon also heaved a sigh of relief. Alright, let's do that. Compared to helping the invader complete its mission, it was better to take the initiative to slap its face. Speaking of which, Lone Moon thought of something. That silly $2. What did he do to the other party before he ascended? To make that soul willing to sell the main soul to the invader, just to seek revenge on him. By right, someone who could ascend to immortality and not be struck to death by tribulation lightning shouldn't be a very evil person. I Ching faltered and directly pinched his fingers to calculate. After a while he said, she was killed by Zhou Shuming in her previous life. What? Holy shit, there really was a feud. Lone Moon subconsciously calculated as well. After a while his expression darkened again. It was true that that person died in Zhou Shuming's hands in her previous life, but the number of lives she killed was even more uncountable. There were even her blood relatives, including all the disciples of Guai sect. Chapter 635. The intruder's mission was to take revenge on Zhou Shuming and stop him from ascending. It was easy to ruin this mission. The better Zhou Shuming lived, the more aggrieved the intruder would be. It would be best if he ascended in front of her and let the intruder experience the feeling of being unable to do anything to him, even though she couldn't stand him. But now Zhou Shuming's golden finger scoop's scale had already been snatched away. The opportunity to become a disciple of a soul formation supremacy was also ruined. Although with his temperament, it was not impossible for him to ascend, even if the intruder did not attack him. Compared to his previous life, it would be much slower for him to ascend. So the best way was for them to join Guai sect and interfere secretly. On one hand, they could keep an eye on the intruder, and on the other hand, they could slap the intruder in the face. But here came the problem. That day in the dense forest, that intruder had already seen me and Chef, Lone Moon said. Lone Moon frowned and said, if we join Guai sect just like that, we might inadvertently alert the system. That would not be good. They left in a hurry that day and did not hide themselves. It was indeed very likely that they would be recognized. That's not difficult, I Ching said in a low voice. Just create an illusion or change your appearance. No. Lone Moon shook his head. Illusion and illusion spells are convenient, but it's hard to guarantee that the other party won't recognize us. Don't forget that that is an intruder. Who knows what tricks he has? They could even escape from Chef that day. Then what do you think we should do? Apart from the two of us, there's only... He turned to look at a certain someone who was sprawled lazily on the table. Forget it. Let's do it with the two of us. Shening. Son of AB *TCH. I think we should just use the body of heavenly lightning and change our appearance. He suggested. The body of heavenly lightning is not a spell. The change in appearance is permanent for cultivators. But of course that doesn't include us. Confusing the intruder is enough. After this is over, we can release the lightning spirit energy in our bodies and change back anytime we want. I Ching nodded. Indeed, this was the safest. But the three of us are too big of a target. He thought for a moment, then continued. Although that intruder is strange, it's enough for one person to watch $2. Let's discuss who's going to compete. Wait, why are you two hiding so far away? Before he could finish his words, he saw that the master and disciple, who were originally surrounding him, had instantly moved 30 feet away. Let's vote. I vote for Father Nyo. I vote for Father Nyo too. Alright, Father Nyo has more than half of the votes. It's decided then. Father Nyo, you can do it. The purified body will not be a problem for you. Bringing alternate accounts to level up and whatnot. Father Nyo is super professional. For all. Iloneman. Motherf *Ker. Does such a vote have any meaning? You guys just want to F *King slack off. So why don't you just push it to me? In an instant, he felt an urge to teach the brat a lesson. Get it straight. Just whose plane is this? Hello. You too. Just as he was about to retort, the sky suddenly darkened. Thunderclouds instantly appeared, and a thick power of the rule hovered above his head. Wait. Chef, what are you doing? Chef raised his hand and conjured a seal. In the next moment, a bolt of heavenly lightning as thick as a water bucket descended from the sky. With a loud boom, it struck right on top of Loneman's head. On the side of his dharma robe, a trace of burnt yellow color appeared. Silence fell. Father Nyo, the lightning's spiritual power around you is about to dissipate. Do you need me to strike another bolt? Strike your sister. For all, for all. For all, for all. Hey, you can really do it. Loneman's hair stood on end in anger. He took out a spirit stone and threw it over. Get it straight, whose plane is this? There's also the purified body nascent soul tribulation lightning. Why the hell are you striking the ascension tribulation lightning? So what if it's a manager? I see. Then I'll change to something else. What did you say? Boom. Following that, a bolt of nascent soul tribulation lightning struck down. Once again, it accurately struck Loneman's head. Lone Moon, who was struck again. A while later. Chef, I don't think Father Nyo has changed. Did you strike the wrong one again? Master, I haven't seen the tribulation lightning of the lower realm for too long. I'm indeed not too sure. Why don't strike a few more? Yes, Master. No problem, Master. The fan in Loneman's hand turned into a long sword. I'm going to kill you two little bastards. Gui Dai Lone Moon, with his temporary appearance, successfully blended into the new group of outer sect disciples of Gui sect. He successfully moved into the room next to Tu Bucks Swa. Compared to official disciples, outer sect disciples obviously did not have that kind of targeted teaching. Not to mention inner sect disciples who had master's guidance. They basically relied on self-study. There would be golden core cultivators coming to teach them once every 5 days. Apart from that, they had to complete some sect missions every month. It could be said that outer sect disciples were basically left to fend for themselves. Of course, if they worked hard, they could become official disciples after they successfully reach foundation establishment. Then, according to their specialties, they could enter the various peaks to learn the corresponding cultivation techniques. To put it simply, outer sect disciples were disciples who did odd jobs. Hence, the management was very loose. Lone Moon had no choice but to suppress his cultivation level to Qi refinement level 6. And Shen-Ying and I Ching could only continue to be invisible. To be precise, I Ching needed to be invisible. With Shen-Ying's presence, no one would notice her anyway. Today happened to be the teaching day at Teacher Respect Hall. Lone Moon thought about it. In order to spoil the invader's mission, he had to build a good relationship with Tu Bucks Swa. Just as he was thinking, he saw Zwa Shuming walking in. Lone Moon's eyes narrowed. He walked over directly. This. He was just about to greet him when Zwa Shuming's eyes lit up. He spoke first. This fellow disciple looks unfamiliar. Are you also a disciple who just joined today? Yes. He subconsciously replied. Zwa Shuming hurriedly took out 3 pieces of paper and said anxiously. Then dare I ask, junior brother, have you seen the 3 people in the portraits? As he spoke, he handed the papers in his hands to him one by one. Lone Moon looked down. There were 3 portraits. There were 2 men and 1 woman. Although there were some deviations, he could still vaguely see familiar shadows. This was the portraits of the 3 of them. Wasn't it familiar? This silly girl was still looking for them. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. A moment later, he braced himself and replied, I haven't seen them. Oh, Zwa Shuming's eyes, which were initially filled with hope, darkened in an instant. He looked listless and listless. A moment later he replied, Thank you, junior brother. With that said, he sighed and turned to walk into the respect hall. Instead, a disciple at the side saw his confused expression. He could not help but speak up. Junior brother, don't mind him. He pointed at Zwa Shuming in front of him. In a joking tone he said, Speaking of this senior brother Zwa, he's a pitiful person. I joined the sect on the same day as him, 3 days earlier than you. That day, he originally had the chance to be chosen by the Soul Formation Cultivator to enter Danxia Mountain. But the Supremacy suddenly changed his mind and chose another senior brother. Maybe he was hit by the sudden ups and downs. He insisted that the 3 Foundation establishment friends who joined the sect with them were missing. He was looking for them everywhere. These few days, He asked all the disciples in the outer sect. The more he spoke, the more pity he looked at Zhuo. He sighed and said, "Sigh. He was a good person. He was hit so hard that he went crazy. How pitiful." Lone Moon. I Ching. Shining. Lone Moon silently turned to exchange a look with the two invisible people beside him. They were both at a loss for words. They did not expect that in the time it took for them to go back and make a video call to Sister Jing, Zhuo, a silly girl, was rumored to be a lunatic with delusions, and he even looked for them for 3 whole days. Chapter 636. The three of them felt a little guilty about disappearing without saying a word. They had thought that it would be strange for him to not be able to find them for a few days at most. What's more, they were not very familiar with each other to begin with. They just didn't expect Zhuo to be so persistent. Not only did he search the entire Gui sect, he even seemed to be expanding outwards. And the more he searched, the more anxious he became. It seemed like he would not stop until he found them. Lone Moon felt that in order not to affect his cultivation, and to complete his grand goal of fighting the invasion, he had to find a chance to bluff. No, to explain to him. So early the next morning, he stopped a certain someone who was about to go out. $2. Fellow Taoists wa. Zhuo faltered for a moment before turning back. This, junior brother, how are you doing? Why are you stopping me? I just entered the sect and live next door to you. That's why I came to say hello. Lone Moon pointed to the room next door and glanced at the stack of portraits in his hands. Brother Zhuo, are you planning to go out? That's right. He nodded and said with a serious expression. I plan to go down the mountain to the nearby immortal city to put up some notices. Notices? Lone Moon faltered for a moment. He took a closer look and realized that there was an additional line of words above the portraits. It was boldly added, missing person notice. 4 eye-catching words. The 3 of them. He really wouldn't give up until he found them. It couldn't be helped that he was too honest. Lone Moon's mouth twitched, and he immediately looked away. I saw that you've been looking for these 3 people for a few days. Could they be your relatives? That's not it. He smiled. They're my friends. Speaking of which, I've only known them for less than 3 days. We agreed to join Gui sect together, but I don't know why. The day we came to the sect, they suddenly disappeared. Oh, so that's how it is. I think they might have other important matters to attend to. Lone Moon advised in a low voice. What's more, you guys just met by chance. Why do you have to waste so much effort, Brother Zhuo? It wasn't easy for you to enter Gui sect. You should work hard on your cultivation. This junior brother doesn't know the inside story. Please don't spout nonsense. He was suddenly enraged. He turned to glare at him and said disapprovingly, They are the friends that I Zhuo recognize. Now that they have suddenly disappeared, how can I not investigate? It would be fine if they were safe. But what if they encountered danger and were isolated and helpless? If I sit back and do nothing, how can I be worthy of being called a friend? His face was filled with anger, as if the other party had just said something to humiliate him. He said word by word, I Zhuo am not that kind of despicable person. What's more, they saved my life. What life-saving grace? Was he talking about that day in the forest when he conveniently dragged him back? They really didn't go there to save him. And he thought of something, and his expression became even more anxious. Their sudden disappearance might have something to do with saving me that day. Could it be that he thought that their disappearance was due to the revenge of the person who stole the treasure that day? Brother Catch, you really have a big imagination. He said that my brother Zhuo, this fellow Taoist. He was obviously angry. He didn't even address Lone Moon as junior brother. He directly said, I still have important matters to attend to. I won't accompany you any longer. With that said, he looked at Lone Moon meaningfully. He snorted and turned to leave in a huff. Was he being looked down upon by him? He definitely was. Seeing that he was about to walk away with the pile of notices, Lone Moon sighed and said loudly, Fellow Taoists, please wait. You haven't returned the 2 spirit stones you lent me the other time. I lent you spirit stones? Shuming stopped in his tracks and subconsciously took out his bag of spirit stones. After a long while, he poured out 3 spirit stones and handed them over. I'm sorry. I used all my spirit stones yesterday to ask someone to help me find them. I only have 3 left. When I have more. He suddenly stopped mid-sentence and looked up at the person in front of him. His eyes slowly widened as if he had just understood. The huge pile of notices in his hands fell to the ground. You are. Lone Moon nodded. It's just what you think. Fortunately, he wasn't too stupid. He finally reacted. Shuming was completely stunned. He looked at the person in front of him in disbelief. He then said tentatively, Don't tell me you really. Yes. You are. Miss Shin? Lone Moon. Shim my ass. 2 soft snickers sounded. Lone Moon turned to the side and glared at a certain 2 people whose shoulders were shaking crazily. You 2 little bastards, shut up. Don't laugh. He directly shouted at them through voice transmission. Then, he slapped the other party's shoulder with a frown. Cold air rushed out of his body. He gritted his teeth and said, How do you think I look like Shun? Are you King blind? Try calling her miss again. You can't tell if she's a man or a woman. Fellow Taoist Lone Moon? Shuming trembled and immediately changed his words. At least you know what's good for you. Lone Moon snorted and let go of his hand. He took the 3 spirit stones from Shuming's hand and said, Remember, you still owe me 1. Ha! Oh. Shuming was obviously still in shock. He nodded blankly and scanned the complete stranger in front of him. Brother Lone Moon, why did you suddenly become like this? It's a long story. Lone Moon opened his mouth to make up a story. Wait. Shuming suddenly thought of something. He looked around and saw that there was no one around. He then stepped aside and said, Brother Lone Moon, let's go inside and talk. With that, he walked quickly into the house and closed the door and windows before continuing. Brother Lone Moon, why did you guys suddenly disappear that day? Lone Moon's eyes darted around, and he started to make up stories. Actually, we didn't really want to join Gui sect. After we boarded the ship that day, we regretted it. That's why we left. I see. Shuming believed him without hesitation. He nodded and said, I knew it. Based on your cultivation, joining Taiyin sect was the best choice. It's normal for you to hesitate. Oh yes, where are Miss Shun and fellow Taoist Ziqing? Why are you back now? And why did your face suddenly change? If I said, I accidentally fell down on the spirit boat that day, would you believe me? Lone Moon asked casually. So you fell down? Shuming suddenly understood. I was wondering why your cultivation level had regressed. So it's because you were injured. Is it serious? Have you recovered? Will it affect your foundation? Lone Moon. I Ching. Shining. He just said it casually. You really believed him? You must be a palace level dumb by Tian. Then Miss Shen and fellow Taoists I Ching aren't here. Is it because they've already joined Taiyin sect? Shuming automatically filled in the missing invisible 2 people. He even found an excuse for Lone Moon to return to Gui sect and not be chosen by Taiyin sect. Lone Moon scanned him from head to toe. A moment later, he patted his shoulder with a gratified expression. I said $2. Ah. Ha. Was $2 referring to him? You're the most worry-free dumb by Tian I've ever met. He didn't even need to think about making up a story. Shuming did it himself. This is a sensible friend. Forget it. I don't want the remaining spirit stone. Chapter 637. It's been hard on you these few days. Lone Moon looked at him and thanked him sincerely. I'm sorry, I disappeared without notifying you. At the end of the day, it was their fault, causing him to search for so many days in vain. Brother Lone Moon, don't say that. Shuming did not mind at all. I wanted to find it myself. It has nothing to do with you. Besides, haven't you been injured these few days? It's normal that you didn't notify me in time. He felt even more guilty. What was going on? You've just entered the sect. Just cultivate in peace these few days? He scanned him from head to toe. I see that you have a triple spirit root of water, wood and fire. Your foundation is quite solid. Foundation establishment should not be a problem. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. After all, he was someone who taught Fatty, an all-round cultivator. His face lit up. Fellow Taoist Lone Moon used to be a foundation establishment cultivator. Although his cultivation had regressed now, he was definitely more familiar with foundation establishment than him. With his guidance, his cultivation would be less crooked, so he immediately cupped his fists and said, "Thank you, Brother Lone Moon. I have some questions." "Don't stand on ceremony, speak." The two chatted about cultivation for a while. Swasheming naturally did not have heaven-defying qualifications like Fatty. There were many simple questions that he did not understand. Fortunately, when Invincible Sect was first established, Yu Hong and the others did not have high qualifications. He was already used to teaching them. Swasheming listened very seriously, perhaps because the questions that had piled up for many years were finally answered. The spirit chi in his body was faintly floating. He believed that his cultivation would improve soon. The two of them chatted for 4 hours, and it was almost noon. The master and disciple who had been listening at the side had already returned to their rooms to cook. Lone Moon calculated the time for lunch and ended this cultivation session. "Let's end here for today." Lone Moon stood up. "If you understand what I said, foundation establishment should not be difficult." It was time to go back and snatch food. "Thank you, Brother Lone Moon." Swasheming also stood up, bowing to him with some excitement. "With Brother Lone Moon's guidance, I really feel enlightened." "That's good." Lone Moon smiled. "After talking for 4 hours, if you still didn't understand, then I have to question your intelligence. Then I'll go back to my room first. Take care, Brother Lone Moon." Lone Moon hurriedly stood up to send him off. Lone Moon turned and was about to step out of the room when he suddenly thought of something. He could not help but turn back and ask, "Do you really believe that my appearance changed because I fell off the spirit boat?" Swasheming faltered for a moment, then suddenly smiled and thought about it before replying, "I treat you guys as friends. I was anxious to find you guys just to make sure you were safe. Now that I know, everything else isn't important anymore." What did it matter whether it was true or not? He didn't need to know. Lone Moon looked at him with some surprise. It turned out that he did not believe the reason that was full of loopholes. He only believed in his own judgment in choosing friends. Who would have thought that he would be so much more perceptive than he had imagined? It was no wonder that he was able to ascend previously. However, he was still a naive person. That people could rest assured about. It was not in vain that they had chosen to help him ascend. However, he was so stupid. After he ascended, he should let Yu Hong join the sect. Otherwise, if he was sold, he would probably have to help count spirit stones. He sighed and walked out directly. Just as he was about to turn to rush for lunch next door, he saw a Gui disciple in a blue robe walking in. "Swasheming? Is Swasheming here?" The moment he entered the courtyard, he opened his mouth and shouted several times. His tone was full of impatience. He was holding an account book in his hand. With this shout, many disciples who were in the same courtyard came out of curiosity. "Isn't this senior brother he who is in charge of the outer sect?" A disciple greeted. "Why are you here personally? Are you going to assign us a mission?" "There's no rush for you guys. I'm looking for someone called Swasheming," that person said. "Senior brother he?" Swasheming also recognized the person who came in. He immediately walked out of the house behind Lone Moon and went forward to greet him with cupped fists. "Greetings, senior brother he. I wonder why senior brother has called for me." That cultivator with the surname, he scanned him up and down arrogantly. "You're the new Swasheming?" "That's right." He nodded. Something flashed in that person's eyes. He lowered his head to look at the account book and said, "From today onwards, you'll be in charge of the northernmost spirit field in the back mountain. Every 3 months, you'll hand in a batch of low-level spirit herbs. Remember, it must not be less than 50 stalks. Plant spirit herbs." Swasheming was stunned for a moment, his face full of disbelief. Lone Moon, who was at the side, also frowned. He stepped forward and said, "Senior brother, I remember that new outer sect disciples only have to be responsible for harvesting spirit herbs and the like. When can they directly start planting spirit fields? There's not enough people planting spirit fields in the back mountain. Naturally, disciples have to fill in the gaps. What's more, that disciple with the surname he glanced at was shumming and snorted coldly. I heard people say that you haven't been cultivating properly these few days. You've been wandering around the sect every day. You even said that you're looking for friends. You haven't even completed the sect's missions properly. My Guei sect does not tolerate disciples who slack off. I'm giving you a chance to make up for your mistakes. Loman's frown deepened. Although Zhua Shuming had wasted a few days searching for people, the sect's missions would only be completed once a month. It had only been a few days. Using this reason to punish him to look after spirit fields was a little too much. Unless someone was purposely keeping an eye on him, waiting to grab hold of his hair. And this person was only an intruder. There was no one else. Senior brother, new disciples don't have enough experience. I'm afraid it's not appropriate for them to start planting spirit fields directly. Lone Moon probed. What's not appropriate about it? Indeed, that person panicked. He turned and glared at Lone Moon. Can't you learn even if you don't know? What do you think joining Guei sect is for? If you're so worried, why don't you go as well? Senior brother, you can't. Zhua Shuming panicked. Just as he was about to explain, the cultivator with the surname he said directly, It's decided. If you don't want to do it, then get out of Guei sect. With that said, he turned and walked out. At once, the cultivators in the courtyard looked at Lone Moon and Zhua Shuming with sympathy, but they did not dare to stay any longer. They all turned and returned to their houses, afraid that they would get into trouble like Lone Moon. Lone Moon's expression darkened. Looking at the other party's reaction, it was indeed the intruder's idea, but he did not know what she wanted. Brother Lone Moon. Zhua Shuming's expression was also full of guilt. I'll go and talk to senior brother This has nothing to do with you. Forget it. Lone Moon waved his hand and said nonchalantly, It's just planting spirit herbs. Don't worry, I know how to do it. Invincible sect relied on this to raise their disciples. What kind of carrots had they not planted before? Moreover, but brother Lone Moon, Zhua Shuming still wanted to say something. Lone Moon directly cut him off. Go back and prepare. I'll see you in an hour. With that said, he turned and went into the house. Zhua Shuming still looked anxious. Seeing that the other party had gone far, he could only go back into the house. Yet the moment Lone Moon entered the house, he picked up the chopsticks on the table. With sharp eyes and nimble hands, he directly picked up the last piece of meat on the plate. Then he picked up the rice bowl and sat down. He quickly stuffed it into his mouth. That's right, chef. As he ate, he turned to look at a certain someone who was cooking in the array beside him. In the afternoon, you'll follow me to the back mountain. Shenning, who lost a piece of meat. Chapter 638. As a sect famous for its pills, Guei sect naturally had the majority of pill cultivators. More than 80% of them were pill cultivators. But pill cultivators were the most expensive of all cultivators. That was because pill cultivators mainly relied on pill refinement to advance. And pill refinement required materials. The most common materials were all kinds of spirit herbs. Moreover, the materials used for every type of pill were different. There were thousands of pills in the world. The higher the grade of the pill, the more expensive the materials used. It could be said that the early stages of pill cultivation were practically a living spirit stone burning machine. And with so many disciples in Guei sect, there were even more low-level disciples. Hence, the demand for low-level spirit herbs was even greater. Of course, these could not all be bought from outside. Hence, the sect planted a large spirit field at the foot of the mountain. It was specially used to plant all kinds of low-level spirit herbs. And these spirit fields were usually handed over to experienced outer sect disciples to plant. The sect would provide the seeds. After the seeds matured, they would take a portion of the fruits. The remaining disciples could keep it for their own medicine, or exchange it for spirit stones from the sect. This seemed like a good job. But spirit fields could not be planted by just any disciple. Spirit herbs were different from mortal herbs. They had very high requirements for the soil, weather, and even spirit chi. They needed a lot of patience and time. Moreover, every spirit herb had a different planting method. Ordinary people would not be able to master it in a short period of time. Not to mention that Zhuo Shuming was a new disciple for less than a month. Even the most talented disciple would not be able to plant anything without 3 to 4 years. This was also the reason why Lone Moon only dared to hand over the task of planting spirit herbs to Radish, and not the other disciples. Radish itself was a plant spirit. Only it knew what those immortal herbs needed and how to grow well. Although they were prepared, Lone Moon and Zhuo Shuming were still shocked when they saw the spirit fields they were given. When they arrived at the spirit fields, they realized that the situation was worse than they imagined. They were given a piece of spirit field at the edge. Beside it was a stone mountain. The soil was very dry and the spirit chi was pitifully thin. More importantly, rocks would roll down from the mountain from time to time. Although it was said to be 2 acres, half of the land had already been filled with rocks. This was not even a mortal field, much less a spirit field. How could this be? Zhuo Shuming was completely dumbfounded. He stared in disbelief at the overgrown weeds in front of him, and turned to look at the disciple who was leading the way. "Senior brother, have we come to the wrong place? Is this the spirit field we're supposed to plant?" "Yeah, this is the spiritual field of the Qian position." The disciple leading the way nodded and couldn't help but mutter. "This piece of land has been barren for decades. It's impossible to grow anything. I don't know why the sect suddenly sent people here." He looked up at the two of them and shook his head with some pity, but he didn't ask any more questions and directly handed over the bag in his hand. "Here, these are the seeds for the spirit herb you want to plant. Remember to hand over 50 low-level spirit herbs in 3 months." After saying that, he didn't stay and turned to leave. Zhuo Shuming took the bag of seeds, and his eyes became even more confused. He subconsciously opened the bag and looked inside. The seeds in the bag were only the size of a palm, and there were red, green, black, and all kinds of colors. It was obvious that they were not the same species. How can this be? Zhuo Shuming was shocked. It was bad enough that the spirit field was barren, but why were the seeds different? It would be strange if they could grow anything like this. That senior brother must have taken the wrong ones. I'll go and get a new bag from him. He closed the bag and turned to leave. "Come back." Lone Moon reached out and pulled him back. He snatched the bag from his hand and rolled his eyes. "Are you really stupid or are you pretending to be? Just look at this spirit field, and you know that he's doing this on purpose. If you go back just like this, will he care about you?" Zhuo Shuming faltered, his expression full of confusion. "But this is the first time I've met that senior brother. I've never offended him before. Why is he targeting me like this? Who said he's the one targeting you?" Lone Moon shook his head. "It's not him." He was even more confused. "But I've never offended anyone else?" Lone Moon frowned. But he didn't know how to explain. Could he just say that he was targeted by an intruder? He could only sigh. "Forget it. It doesn't matter who it is. The most important thing for you now is to work hard on your cultivation. When you're strong enough, you naturally won't be afraid of these petty tricks. Even if you chase after him now, you probably won't get any answers." Zhuo Shuming clenched his fists. A hint of struggle flashed across his face. After a moment of silence, he said, "I still want to go. I don't think I've done anything wrong. Since I've entered Guiyi sect, as a disciple, planting spirit fields is part of my duty. I have no complaints about this. But these seeds..." His gaze darkened. "I don't know why the other party is doing this. But planting spirit fields concerns the sect. I have to get to the bottom of it." His gaze was clear and determined. One could see through him at a glance. He had a naive and stubborn look. Lone Moon did not speak. After some thought, he stepped aside. If he wanted to go, then go. Very soon, he would discover that everything in this world could not be explained clearly. "Brother Lone Moon, don't worry. I'll be back soon," Zhuo Shuming instructed. Then, He turned and chased in the direction that the disciple who led the way had disappeared in. Loanmoon sighed. Indeed, he was still too young. He looked down at the bag of seeds in his hand. Then, he handed it to Chef. Let's begin. Me. Chef faltered. He looked at the seeds in his hand in shock. He only knew how to stir-fry them. If not you, me? He glared at him. What do you think I called you here for? He was a prodigal who only knew how to spend money every day. What was wrong with doing some work? I've never planted spirit herbs before. Chef opened the bag. Didn't Radish do this before? How about? I asked Radish to come down. What Radish? Loanmoon rolled his eyes. Radish was a flower maniac. If he asked it to come down, it would expose the two of them. Just pluck the grass and scatter the seeds. You call this planting spirit herbs? Chef looked at the seeds in his hand suspiciously. On account of the food expenses he could not refute. He could only take the seeds and walk into the field where the grass was taller than a person. He thought for a moment. In the next moment, sword chi exploded from his body. Like a sharp knife, it swept toward the entire spirit field. For a moment, the weeds were like chopped chives, falling to the ground. The soil on the ground was overturned by the sword chi attack. In the blink of an eye, the spiritual field, which was so deep that even the mud could not be seen, had become bare. Even the ground had been turned over. I Ching then opened the bag. He grabbed a handful of seeds and scattered them. He did not care if he scattered them evenly. He tipped the bag down and shook it twice. Then he turned and walked back. It's done. It took less than 2 minutes. Loanmoon did not seem to care about how he planted them. Can they grow like this? Chef asked. It was rare for him to be so nosy. Of course. Loanmoon turned back to look at him. Then, he looked up at the sky meaningfully. Then he replied, You planted them. They dare not grow. Chapter 639. Zhuoshengming did not expect that it was just as Loanmoon said. Even when he went to the door, he did not get any answers, and was even chased out. He vaguely sensed that even the steward of the outer sect did not know who gave him this task. He instantly felt a little disheartened, and unwillingly had to return to the spirit field. But that piece of land could not even be considered a spirit field. Not to mention planting spirit herbs. It was impossible to even revert it back to a field that could be planted. Because of this, he felt even more guilty towards Loanmoon, who was implicated by him. Once he returned, he bowed towards him. Brother Loanmoon, I'm sorry, it's me who even. Before he finished speaking, he saw that the ground that was originally filled with weeds, as tall as a person, had completely changed. The weeds were gone, the ground had been turned over, and there was a fresh smell of soil all around. This land, how did it turn over so quickly, Brother Loanmoon, you, so fast? What happened to the hard soil that was extremely difficult to cultivate? Loanmoon stood up nonchalantly before nodding and answering. The land is already planted. Come. Let's talk about cultivation. Hurry up and upgrade the face-slapping set. Zhuoshengming was dumbfounded, completely unable to recover from the huge change in front of him. What? Loanmoon glanced at him and said with a serious expression. With your cultivation, if you don't work hard, are you going to wait for your cultivation to grow naturally? You cannot slack off on cultivation. Hurry up and meditate and cultivate. Okay. Zhuoshengming was shocked by the look and suddenly forgot what he wanted to ask. Subconsciously, he sat down on the ground and began to absorb spirit chi. He did not know if it was an illusion, but for some reason, he felt that the spirit chi around him had become thicker. Even faintly felt that it was even thicker than the main peak. He could not help but enter the state of cultivation. Brother Loanmoon was right. No matter what was going on with this spirit field, his priority now was to improve his own strength. Only when he was strong enough would others not be able to bully him. Other than completing the sex mission, he had to work hard on cultivation. But this spirit field, even if it was reclaimed, the spirit herbs would probably not grow well. He would do his best to plant it. If he really could not hand over the 50 spirit herbs, he would bear all the punishment from the sect. Having made up his mind, he concentrated on his cultivation. However, What happened next directly messed up all his plans, and even made him a little dumbfounded. He originally thought that it would be pretty good if a dozen or so low-level spirit herbs could grow on such a piece of land. But when he arrived the next day, he discovered that the originally barren ground had sprouted a large patch of crispy green shoots overnight. Each shoot carried spiritual energy, and there was no doubt that they were spirit plants. It was far more than just 50. He was overjoyed. This was simply a miracle. With such a large batch, if they took care of it carefully, they might be able to gather enough to hand over. Unfortunately, his teammate Lone Moon obviously didn't think so. Brother Lone Moon, I didn't expect it to really germinate. The spirit chi in the morning is dense, and spirit plants like water. Let's go get some water now. There's no need, he replied. Zwashumming faltered. Before he could finish his words, the surroundings suddenly darkened. A dark cloud floated over, and a light rain poured down, instantly drenching the entire spiritual field. Zwashumming. This is too much of a coincidence. But the rain was not entirely a good thing. If there's too much rain, it will easily damage the shoots. Let's dig a canal. No need, Lone Moon replied with the same two words. Indeed, in the next moment, the rain stopped and the clouds dispersed. It was as if the clouds were really just there to water the plants. Zwashumming. The key was that this was not the first or second time. What happened next completely toppled his worldview. Brother Lone Moon, the spirit shoots have already grown. I think we need to fertilize them. Let's go look for some plant ash. No need. A strong gust of wind blew and dust flew. The strong wind carried a layer of black ash across the entire spiritual field, leaving a thick layer of plant ash. Zwashumming. That works too. Brother Lone Moon, the spirit shoots have already started to grow. This situation is extremely prone to insects. Why don't we ask for some insect-repellent talismans from the senior brother in charge? No need. A wave of bird cries sounded. Instantly, a large flock of spirit birds flew over from afar and landed on the ground. Then they focused on searching for insects to eat. Zwashumming. Holy shit. Sigma Q. P. He suddenly felt like he could not help at all. These spirit herbs were not planted by them. They must have been planted by the heavens. _3 As for the spirit plants in the field, they grew larger and larger, more and more vigorous, more and more pleasing to the eye, and the longer they grew, the more their shapes became wrong. Brother Lone Moon, this is a second stage 2-leaf fresh herb, right? Why did it grow 4 leaves? Could it be a mutation? Brother Lone Moon, that's a penetrating wood lotus. I remember it was a 3rd stage one. Why did it evolve into a 4th stage one? Brother Lone Moon, is this a purple spirit ginseng? Look at the leaves. They seem to be bigger than a 1,000-year-old one. Brother Lone Moon, that stalk. Logically speaking, it was very difficult to mutate and evolve spirit herbs. Some people would not even see one stalk in their entire lives. However, upon closer inspection, although this spiritual field was filled with spirit plants ranging from grade 1 to grade 4, every single one of them was either mutated or evolved. There was actually not a single one of them that was growing normally. The surroundings were filled with spirit energy. It seemed like if he did not change, he would not fit in. Calm down. Lone Moon patted his shoulder naturally. You'll be fine once you get used to it. He could get used to this? Alright, hurry up and cultivate. I'll teach you a simple sword technique today. Lone Moon changed the topic. As soon as he finished speaking, the other party's face paled. Is it really that simple? Of course. This is the basics. Zwashumming subconsciously touched his bruised face. You said the same thing a few days ago. He did not know why, but ever since the day he planted the spirit fields, Brother Lone Moon seemed to suddenly become more interested in his cultivation. Every day, he would either force him to cultivate or teach him all kinds of spells. He did not give him any chance to rest. He would teach him all kinds of spells. If the first time was not enough, he would teach him twice. If the second time was not enough, he would teach him thrice. If the third time was not enough, he would teach him. Straight face, yet he could not retort. After all, the other party was doing it out of kindness. His previous cultivation was indeed higher than his. He could only bite the bullet and learn. Although he did not have to plant the spirit fields anymore, he became even busier. He was not allowed to rest unless he learned 1 or 2 spells, or increased his cultivation. But even so, he felt that Brother Lone Moon was looking at him with more and more disdain. His entire face seemed to say, "You're the worst student I've ever taught." He had almost forgotten that his mission was to plant the spirit fields, not to cultivate. What's more, it was the kind where he risked his life to cultivate. Even when he occasionally remembered the mission, he reminded him. "Brother Lone Moon, the spirit plant." "What spirit plant? You can't even learn the water manipulation art. What face do you have to say anything else? Continue cultivating." Alright. Why did it feel like he had gained a master instead of a friend? The key was that his cultivation had really increased. In a short 2 months, he had risen from the 7th stage of chi refinement to the 10th stage. He seemed to be on the verge of breaking through. Lone Moon, who had been teaching for 3 months. He suddenly missed Fatty, who had skipped a grade. Chapter 640. 3 months later. A pink figure followed behind Steward He of the outer sect, heading towards the spirit field at the foot of the mountain. Junior Sister Shu Yi. Actually, you don't have to come personally. Just let me know if there's anything. I'll get someone to send it to Danshan Mountain. Steward He led the way while smiling obsequiously. Senior brother, he is too polite. How can I trouble you? Shu Yi replied with a bashful smile, her face innocent and adorable. It's just because my father needs to refine a batch of spirit replenishing pills. Coincidentally, he lacks the fragrant spirit herb. This kind of low-level spirit herb can only be grown in the outer sect. My father needs it urgently. Coincidentally, I'm free, so I made a trip here. So the fragrant spirit herb that Junior Sister is looking for is what perfected Shu needs. Steward He was shocked. His attitude became even more respectful. Junior Sister Shu Yi is indeed perfected Shu's bloodline. Not only is your cultivation rising quickly, you're also so filial. Senior brother He, you flatter me. Shu Yi smiled a little embarrassedly, looking like an innocent little girl. There are many of these fragrant spirit herbs in the outer sect. Coincidentally, today is the harvest period that happens once every 3 months. Steward He's gaze towards her became even more amiable. He hurriedly pointed to the front and said, "Junior Sister Shu, please follow me. Just tell me which spirit field you like." "Thank you, senior brother." Shu Yi immediately skipped and followed, walking past large patches of spirit fields. Unknowingly or unknowingly, she approached the spirit field at the very edge. Suddenly, a strange voice sounded. "Host, don't you want to hurry and refine that heart-shaped immortal artifact? Then avenge the original owner? What are you doing here now?" "Of course it's to send warmth." Shu Yi answered directly in her heart. Wasn't Zhou Shuming punished to come here to farm spirit fields? And he even chose the worst spirit field. Now that the 3-month time limit is up, he definitely can't hand over 50 spirit herbs. I naturally have to help him. Help him why? Isn't Zhou Shuming our enemy? He killed the original owner in the previous life. Why are you helping him? System, you don't understand. Shu Yi sighed and said, "For a scumbag like Zhou Shuming, just snatching away his opportunity and preventing him from ascending, the original owner would not be satisfied. Only by making him lose everything, physically and mentally, and completely lose his will to cultivate, will he be able to achieve his goal of revenge. Sometimes living is worse than death." 001 doesn't understand. We've already taken away his most important immortal artifact, and he can't become a disciple of a soul formation cultivator. Isn't that enough? Of course not. Shu Yi said angrily. In my previous life, the original Shu Yi loved him so much, and for him, I did not hesitate to put myself in danger again and again. But he didn't know how to cherish it at all. Not only did he reject the marriage in front of everyone, but he also embarrassed her, because of a disciple who had just entered the sect. If not for this, the original owner would not have become a demon. In the end, he even died in his hands. It was Zhou Shuming who ruined Shu Yi's life. How can the resentment of the original owner be resolved, just because she cannot ascend? What do you plan to do then? Didn't he say that he never had feelings for this junior sister of the original owner? Shui laughed coldly. Of course I'll let him have a taste of what it feels like to not be able to get what he yearns for. So the host came back this time to pretend to help him avoid the punishment of not being able to hand over the spirit herb. So that's what Shuming would like you? How is liking him enough? Shui said. I'll make him remember this. You're indeed the best host. Go for it. I have high hopes for you. Shui did not reply anymore, but the smugness in her eyes deepened, filled with the glow of determination. On a hill not far away, Lone Moon, who heard the whole thing. I Ching, who had just arrived. Speaking of which, did these two invaders really not notice this broadcast effect at all? They could hear it even from hundreds of meters away. It was really noisy. He turned to look at the side of the spirit field, at the scumbag, Swatubucks, who was already meditating. This was the first time he took a good look at his face. He didn't look that good. He wasn't even as good as that unlucky Song Run. What exactly did he do to attract such a rotten peach blossom? Even his ascension was dragged down. No wonder he bought it for $2. Father Neo. I Ching looked at Lone Moon inquiringly, then turned to look at Zhou Shuming, who was meditating at the side of the field. Lone Moon frowned, then replied, Let's go. That invader is probably coming over. I Ching then raised his hand and undid the spirit gathering array beside $2, then kept the 2 plates of pastries in front of Lone Moon. Holy shit. I brought those. What right do you have to keep them? Just as he was about to snatch them back, those 2 were already coming over. Senior brother, what are they planting there? There seems to be the smell of fresh fragrant grass. Shui suddenly pointed to the spirit field at the side that was blocked by a large patch of weeds. That's a spirit field that's more remote. The spirit chi is also relatively thin. Steward, he replied casually. Suddenly thinking of something, he added, Oh right, a while ago, a disciple was sent over looking at the time. It's time to hand over the spirit herbs. Since that's the case, let's go over and take a look. There might really be fresh fragrant grass that looks even better. That's good too. Something flashed in Steward He's eyes. He nodded. It's also convenient to look for that disciple who's planting and collect the spirit herbs that he handed over. He replied seriously, but in his heart he was thinking, how could that piece of land grow spirit herbs? Back then, when the higher-ups transferred that person to this spirit field, he already understood that this disciple must have offended someone from the higher-ups. As long as he waited for this season's harvest, if the other party could not hand over the spirit herbs, he could take the opportunity to chase him out of the sect. This kind of thing happened frequently in the outer sect. Everyone had a tacit understanding. Now that Shui, an inner sect disciple, was here, plus she was the daughter of a nascent soul elder, who knows, she might even be able to bring the news to the inner sect, and even gain some benefits. With that thought, he walked even faster, directly bypassing the large patch of tall weeds, heading towards the piece of land at the side. Shu Yi's expression darkened, and she immediately followed. The location of that piece of land was at the edge of the mountain. Due to the lack of spirit chi, the surrounding land was barren, covered with weeds that were as tall as a person, blocking one's vision. There was no way to see the situation of that piece of land at the side. Both of them had their own thoughts. Walking along a small path at the side, Shui looked at the surrounding weeds. Her thoughts became firmer, so she pretended not to know and asked, Senior brother, I see that this place has been barren for quite a long time. Why would they still arrange for disciples to plant here? Can spirit herbs be grown from this? Junior sister must be joking. This is a spirit field. As long as you put your heart into it, you will naturally be able to grow spirit herbs. Steward, he replied, finally bypassing the weeds. But this piece of land doesn't even have spirit chi. How is it possible to hand over spirit herbs? Wouldn't this be a little difficult? She was just about to lay the groundwork and speak up for the other party, but she realized that the person in front of her suddenly stopped walking. His entire body stiffened on the spot. Senior brother, Senior brother, that you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.